My first date turned into a total nightmare. I didn't know I could be this uncomfortable. The guy I met at a convention who was dressed as the Undertaker. Well, that's a good start, I guess. A week later, I went to his house and he was still dressed as the Undertaker. He also had a shrine to the Undertaker, a cardboard cutout to the Undertaker, and honest to God, related everything we spoke about directly to something relevant to the Undertaker. Well, did he mention that the Undertaker threw mankind 18 feet off of the Hell in a Cell cage onto a table? I'm pretty sure that you met a Reddit legend. Best date in my humble opinion. I told him not to get a hot dog from a dodgy street stand. He did anyway. We went to the cinema and he tooted the whole time violently.
Ah, I see you dated my husband.
Well, my two worst would be a tie, so here's both of them. The first was a guy who used Andrew Tate-style dating tactics and negged me the whole time. He actually made me cry on the date and then said, "Look, I live next door. Do you want to come up and cry on my shoulder?" I stormed off. Well, good for you. And two, there was the toe licker. Hot summer day, went to a street fair in sandals, sweaty and dirty feet by this point. We go into a bar. He keeps grabbing for my feet to rub them, and I keep pulling them away and telling him to stop. And then he grabbed them while I tried to flag the waitress down to close out and leave, and he licked in between my toes. Ugh. What a repulsive, gross turd.
Man, what a rookie mistake. You've got to wait for the third date to start licking toes.
I'm a quiet, shy person. My date was also a quiet, shy person. So yeah, that was just really awkward. You met a reflection of yourself and you didn't like them? What does that say about you? He came with his mum, and his mum sat there, staring at me as if I were her number one enemy. Dinner went really well and we ended up back at my place. After we hooked up, she waited about 5 seconds before telling me she was married. Oh, but don't worry, we're in an open relationship. He doesn't really like it though. Oh no. I told her that is not how it works.
This happened to a friend in college and the lady's husband was a cop. That cop was very upset.
You can't just leave us with no conclusion there, my God. Yeah, polyamorous relationships need to be right on their profile, which is generally how all the people I met in actual open relationships do it. And yeah, in my dating life, it was a deal breaker for me too, but you need to know about that crap ahead of time. Just don't ambush people with it. Some people apparently don't even let their partners know about the open nature of their courtship until after they've been uncovered. I mean, that's just called cheating.
The guy I was dating kept tooting over and over. No smell, just the sound.
Honestly, I would take that over the smell. My worst date tooted, and it was silent, but I kept smelling it, and we were the only two people seated at the bar. Guy from OkCupid showed up 20 minutes late because he was buying cupcakes for us. Weird, because we were meeting at a diner. He immediately offered them to me when he showed up, and of course the waitress said to put them away because it was outside food. We chit-chat over drinks. It was a late-night diner with booze, you see. And because it's late, he insists on driving me home. I'm a dumb 21-year-old, so I agree. In the car ride, he also insists that I eat one of the cupcakes. What looked like cream turned out to be his own little addition. I could taste it immediately. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I froze and just continued giving him directions to my apartment. He texted me the next day wanting to go out again, and I said I was busy because he knew where I lived and I didn't want to make him mad.
That's a criminal case.
Yeah, I feel like you could have gone to the police with one of those since his DNA was on that cupcake. Oh, that's so gross, I'm sorry.
How about the one time where they spent the whole time talking about their ex like I was just a listener, not a person?
Oh my God, you just gave me flashbacks to the worst date I've ever had. He did this, but kept on interjecting in the middle of, that's like abuse behavior, isn't it? Like he not only wanted to talk at me about his ex, but he also wanted me to take his side and validate him. It was so weird. Before I was finally able to politely leave, he tried to kiss me too. Like, bro, what makes you think any of this went well enough for that? Oh boy. They died in the middle of the date. It was a heart attack while hiking.
I'm sorry that happens to you, but I have to ask, did you think,
am I really that unappealing? Also, the narrator has to ask, did they ghost you afterwards? I'm sorry, I'm a bad person. Girl stole my TV remote, so I'd contact her again. Went on a coffee date meeting him for the first time back in the early 2000s. Said hello, got our coffee and sat down. I kept asking him questions, he'd offer a 1 or 2 word response, and then sit there smiling at me. I had to be the one to try and continue the conversation, and after about 15 minutes, I said I had to go. Look, I get being nervous, but he never asked me any questions and just smiled at me weirdly. I got catfished once, and it haunts me to this day. As a 22-year-old gay man, I met up with what I thought was a 28-year-old guy and came to find out he was 48. He spoke zero English and had been using a translating app to communicate with me, and he had an extra finger which he revealed by wiping his mouth with a napkin. I still feel guilty about calling the restaurant from the bathroom and paying the waitress to spill a drink on me so I could leave. Also, I no longer wear skinny jeans because another first date, a few weeks later, I went to the bathroom and left my wallet on the table, and this guy stole $100 from my wallet. Then he offered me a line of white snow, and when I ended the date, he tried to have his way with me in the parking lot. Oh boy. The next day, he hit me up on Facebook and was wondering when the second date was. God, the guy's dreaming. When I explained to him that there would be no second date because of everything that happened, he denied everything and said I wasn't even worth splitting the bag with. I remained single for 4 years after that summer. Honestly, who could blame you? Went on a date with somebody who'd I'd met online. Immediately realized I'd been catfished. His photos were at least 10 years old, he was about a foot shorter than I'd been led to believe, and he had a hunched back, none of which I'd actually have minded if he'd been honest. Then, during the actual date, he only talked about himself. Not one question about me. Then this guy had the nerve to push me up against a wall and force kiss me. He messaged me and told me he loved me afterwards. I blocked and reported his account. Thankfully, due to his physical disability, he couldn't chase me when I ran away. I remember when I went on a first date and she brought her husband along. I mean, some people would probably be fine with that if everything was above board from the start. But no, this is a video about worst first dates, so I guess everything we'll get here will be a fun little surprise, won't it? Maybe they were hoping that you'd feel too awkward to say anything until you were in an actively committed throuple? Who knows? Met this girl at a restaurant I'd go to for lunch near my office. One of the waitresses was a bona fide ginger, freckles and all, and I was all about that, even though she looked quite a few years older than I was. Turns out, she was all about me too. So, after a few months of playful flirting, we exchanged numbers and set up a date. First thing was that I had to pick her up at her place, which turned out to be her grandparents' house. Now, I say a few years older than me, but I was in my early 30s at the time. So, odd, but I'm not one to judge. We go out to a local place, and she's all over me from the first moment. Not completely inappropriate, but hanging onto my arm, touching me, wanting to be right up against me, the whole works. I'm digging it, actually, because I'd recently gotten out of a pretty touch-starved relationship. As the evening goes on, I'm starting to get a little annoyed. I'm a pretty good conversationalist, but I was carrying the entire thing. Oh, I've been there, buddy. She never once asked me about myself or seemed interested in anything about me. Eventually, we took a walk around a local park since it was a beautiful night, and that's when I start learning so much about her. She pulls out a cigarette to smoke, which is a complete deal-breaker from me, and she could see it in my eyes. She then explains that it's not that bad because it's her substitute for smack, which she used to be addicted to. As the conversation goes on, I learn that she has 2 kids whom she's no longer allowed to see, with an ex-husband she met while she was an exotic dancer. She described her life as a homeless substance addict and how she's doing much better, and that she lives with her grandparents because they manage her money because she isn't very responsible. Needless to say, I wound that date down and we went our separate ways. And by that, I meant I dropped her off at her grandparents' house. Oof, brutal. She spent a few weeks trying to get a second date. This included sending me a link to her FetLife account, which had detailed pictures of her with her, quote, master. Yes, her current and active master. This guy was a fat old ugly man, and she gave me detailed pictures and descriptions of how he liked to have her service his friends. That's also when I found out that she wasn't actually 10 years older than me, she was a year younger. She'd just had a very hard life. Oh, honey. I don't have anything against her, and she seems to be an okay person, but it's not what I was looking for at all, especially immediately after a different really bad relationship. The guy wanted to meet at 9 a.m. specifically. It was supposed to be a meet and greet with coffee and nothing planned. I'm an honest individual, alright? On my dating profile, I put up very recent photos with no distortion, and I clearly state that my hobby is hiking. I look like whatever I look like on photos. So, he should have known what to expect. Shortly after greeting, the guy started criticizing how skinny I looked. Look, it's fine if you prefer voluptuous people. People like what they like. But why would you agree to go on a date with someone who doesn't fit what you like just to criticize them to their face? I explained I'm a healthy weight for me and I have no health issues. I have no problem with my weight. The guy then decided he wanted to have breakfast, which wasn't planned, as I mentioned. I declined and told him I literally just had it before I left the house. He insists I need to eat more so I'm not so skinny. I stayed polite and excused myself. I should have cussed him out right there, though. Yep, the narrator agrees with you there. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? She told me that she knew more about Nairobi, my birthplace, than I did. What was her reason, you ask? She studied African primatology in undergrad. Oh boy. Long ago, I went on a date with someone who had messaged me online. We had a mutual friend, so she seemed legit. Lived about 45 minutes away, but I was game. Except the picture was very old, and that was not what she looked like anymore. I might have been able to get over it, but she spent the whole night talking about it. Am I not what you expected? Over and over. Sorry, that was a mean voice from the narrator. Well, we're going to go with it. She hadn't thought through what she was going to do when we met in person, and this became obvious, and felt guilty about it and she couldn't let it go. I tried to be polite because we had a mutual friend, so instead of being a complete jerk, I just barely spoke instead. So yeah, it was super awkward for everyone involved. Oh. He showed up 40 minutes late with no apology and then spent the entire dinner showing me his crypto portfolio on his phone. When the bill came, he suggested we split it evenly, even though he ordered 3 drinks and I had water. No, there was no second date since you're asking. I went on a date with a guy who was fresh out of a divorce, and he talked about his ex-wife the entire time. Called her the C-word. Yeah, he definitely wasn't over her. Had a blind date back in the Jurassic era before smartphones. We agreed to meet at a bar, and she showed up 20 minutes late, looked at me and said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were a midget," and left. I'm 168 centimeters or 5'6". I wish I was joking. Oh boy, I mean, you're barely even on the short end of normal height, my king. Like, I'm 2 inches taller than you, and I am the national average in the country of very tall people that I live in. This lady sounds incredibly rude and sort of out of touch. Or maybe she's just picky, I don't know. Not worth thinking about, you're better off without her. Went out for dinner, everything was fine, but I just wasn't really vibing with her, you know? On the way home, she asks if I can swing her by Walmart, so I do. I was feeling bad. She goes straight up to grocery shopping, despite saying she only needed a few things. Finally, when she goes to pay, the machine gave her bills back, but not her loose change. If I recall, she was only missing 30 cents or something minuscule. She immediately goes massive Karen on the front-end associate. I offered to just give her $1 just to keep her quiet, but she keeps going. She also had crazy thick southern accent, so it was pretty extra. She finally got her 30 cents or whatever, and I dropped her off. I blocked her the moment her door closed. Well, who could blame you? She peed on my futon. Wait, you went out with my roommate's cat? All she did was question why I'd want to date her. Because that's attractive. Oh, honey. Went to a coffee shop with a girl I met online. It was Dutch, so not a regular coffee shop, we'll say. I took a few puffs of the green stuff, blacked out, and when I regained consciousness, there was a circle of people around me with the ones on both ends feeling my pulse. They brought me back to the back room where I threw up into a bucket for a while. I'll say the girl stayed with me to make sure I was okay, which is admirable, and after that whole fiasco, she obviously cut all contact. I can't say I blame her. I'd talked myself up, young and foolish as I was, and refused to acknowledge that I just can't handle that green devil. Now that I'm older and wiser, I've never touched it again, although I still don't have anything against it either. Went to New York City, his city, for the weekend. First date was him on his laptop at a bar, taking business calls while he tells me to order anything I wanted with his black card. Insert eye roll here. He then tells me he's hungover from the night before, and his apartment is a mess because he had rowdy friends over before who were being wild and who had broken a glass. I mean, fine, I can overlook a few things. Right? Right? But then he tells me we'll have dinner with his friend and their girlfriend that night. Dinner was at 10:30 p.m. Oh, no thanks. And it turns out it was a business dinner, which I'm then subjected to talking to myself for 2 hours at. The next morning, he leaves me to go to a business brunch, tosses me his keys and says to grab lunch, and he'll pay me back. I stepped on a glass, bled everywhere, and took the first cab to stay with my cousin for the duration of the weekend. He came back to his empty apartment, which I cleaned out of spite, and a note that I'd left. Truly terrible. That was over 9 years ago, and he still tries to call or text me from different numbers and add me in social media under new profiles? What the actual frick, dude? I'm Ace, and I went on a date with someone who said that they understood and that they didn't like doing the deed, so I didn't have to worry. We went to a restaurant, sat down and ate our food, except he went through so many beers that he was completely off his face, and proceeded to tell me he couldn't wait to go back to my place to commit the unspeakable act against me, as after dinner we were planning to play video games at my apartment. Naturally, I excused myself to go to the bathroom and left, completely ghosted him after paying the bill. I am so thankful the guy didn't live in the same city as me and didn't know where I lived, so that was pretty much a clean break. She did a line in the bathroom at lunch. Classy. Met her at a party after the main party back in college. She was a bombshell, let me tell ya, and was super flirty and really cool to talk to. Got her number and we texted and messaged over Facebook for a few days before I asked her to go out for dinner and drinks. We agreed on a day and time and kept talking like nothing was wrong. Day of the date, I get there maybe 10 minutes early and get a drink and just chill. She comes stumbling in, half falling out of her dress. She had her huge chest on display, makeup all a mess, and her hair was all greasy. She sits down, almost falls out of the chair, and I get hit with the mix of bong water and bad green herb smell, and her breath just reeked of cigarette smoke. She could not follow along in the conversation, was doing that drunk sway in the chair, and even the server kind of noticed as she kept asking my date if she was okay when she'd refill her water. Maybe she'd thought I'd put something in the drink. My God. What sealed it and made me end it was when I got up to go to the bathroom. She, I guess, tried to go to the bar and order something, but fell out of her chair again and knocked into a person carrying a few drinks, and they spilled all over her and the other person. I came out of the bathroom and she was on the floor yelling at the guy for being in her way. I made up some lie, said I had to go, and paid the tab. My place was a few blocks away, so I just walked home and didn't message her again. I did run into her on campus later on, and she acted like I was invisible. Oh well. I mean, your loss, I guess. I don't know what was going on before, whether she was just sort of anxious to meet you and got a bit blazed or something, but yeah, that was not the best way to go about it. I'd probably try to ignore someone if I made that poor of an impression as well, to be fair. Oh, it is my time to shine. So in college, I went on a Tinder date with a girl. She asked me to pick her up at her house, so I did. We went to a brewery for dinner, drinks, and conversation. We get there, and she immediately goes to the bathroom. Comes back all excited, we start talking, and she starts talking about horoscopes. Asks me about my astrology sign, and then proceeds to bash me about it. She goes back into the bathroom, comes back, and at this point I realize she's doing lines. She then starts asking me about my entire family's horoscopes, including my grandparents. Goes back to the bathroom, and when she comes back she sees my tattoos and then says she wants to show me hers. Proceeds to flash me in this brewery to show me her underchest tattoo. Look, it would have been one thing if I was interested in her, but at this point I was quite sure I would not be going on a second date. Then she started telling me about how much she really likes me. Like a lot. We've only been in there talking for like 20 minutes. I decided it was time to nicely shift towards the end of this date. Now she told me she likes cigarettes, which at the time I casually smoked. So I figure, well, at least I could get her to buy me a packet of cigarettes. So we start walking to the nearest corner store, and she threw me against the fence and started trying to make out with me. I gently pushed her away and we continued walking. After we got to my car again, she asked me to drive her to her friend's house for the night. It was way out of the way. Turns out she doesn't even have her driver's license, which is a red flag for me as well. On the way home, she tells me she loves me. Oh boy. But she also has a boyfriend who she doesn't like. Oh boy, times a million. She tells me over and over that she'd leave him that night for me if I told her we could go on more nights out. I was like, F no. But that gave me an easy out to say, I'm not interested in being in a love triangle situation. After I dropped her off, at that point I'd basically told her no over and over again for the past 5 minutes. She goes into her friend's house and then proceeds to text me pages of messages telling me how crappy of a person I am and that she hated me and I was so rude. It was really a hilarious experience and I called my friends immediately to tell them. Oh no, everyone sucks here. 1991. It was my 16th birthday. My best friend convinced me to go on a blind double date with them and a friend of her boyfriend. Said boyfriend had a Mazda RX-7, which is a two-seater. My bestie sat in the back between the giant speakers, and I sat on my date's lap in the passenger seat. Yes, we were young and stupid, alright? Went to dinner, and it's okay. The date is cute, but a bit of a doofus, so I already know that there just wouldn't be a second date. When leaving, I sat on my date's lap again and had my hand on the side roof to adjust my seating. The date shut my hand in the door, like completely shut. My fingers were sticking out above the top of the door and the door latched. So yeah, sweet 16th blind date ended in a broken hand. Yet the narrator's reasonably sure you might have won the video.
What's the most genius 4D chess strategic move you've seen someone execute at work or in life? In my youth, I posted at a bustling Dragon Ball Z message board. One year on April Fool's, I was messaged by a particularly popular poster that he would like help pranking the board. A particularly tasteless joke. He was going to have his girlfriend post that he was involved in a car accident. To help sell the lie, he wanted me to play devastated and to attack anyone who dared imply such a thing could be a prank, as I would be the only one who knew the truth. But here's the rub. He told everyone, about 80 people, that the accident was fake and that each of us was the only person in on it. And he told each person to react in a particular way, designed to put them in conflict with the other people he had told to act in a particular way. I was told to be devastated. Someone else was told to call bullcrap. Someone else was told that they were glad he's hurt. Someone else was told to say they were donating money for his recovery, etc. He just sat back and watched the board eat itself. It was pretty funny. We spread the word that we were all going to skip the last half of the day by leaving out the doors at the disused extreme ends of the school that they usually had difficulty monitoring. One of the NHS officers had a brother who was a fireman, whose chief was a bit of a safety and regulation stickler. Sure enough, we get to school that day, and the doors at the extreme ends of the building are chained shut. NHS guy calls his brother at lunch. This was prior to cell phones, so you had to wait to use a payphone, and reports a fire hazard. Locked fire exit doors. Result: Fire chief himself shows up and orders the high school evacuated, while he does a top-to-bottom inspection of the whole building. Adding insult to injury, a huge bunch of seniors took off during the evacuation. One of my co-workers at a previous job hated our boss. Guy was a suck-up to higher management, made our lives a living hell by not communicating actual requirements, etc., until it was too late, then bad-mouthed design to upper management and the customer. My coworker did some digging and found an old copy of the guy's resume online, polished it up, and contacted a few recruiters. Boss got headhunted out of the company. We got a new boss who wasn't a gigantic butt, and everyone was happy. I don't know if I would personally consider it a smart move, but my boss had been having heart problems for a while. He was a quadruple bypass. He basically knew it was only a matter of time till his next heart attack. He told me he was going to make damn sure it happened on company property when it came. Sure enough, a couple of weeks ago, he punched in at 6 a.m., he normally comes in around 9:30 to 10, and less than 20 minutes later, he was in an ambulance. Haven't seen him since, but my buddy at HR says he's listed for workers' comp. Worked as a low-level shift manager of a truck stop restaurant for a couple of years. My higher-ups used to do monthly inspections for FMs and quarterly inspections from VPs to see if the facility was up to company standards. I used to have everything spotless prior to a visit, except for something benign yet obvious thing, left dirty. Like the top of the buffet was a little dusty, which was easy to tell with dark-stained wood, or left ice build-up in the freezer. I did this so upper management would be distracted by the small oversight I had made, and would be less inclined to look harder for something to reprimand me on. It was a crappy corporation and were required to find something that I had to improve on every inspection. Not personally witnessed, but I'm in awe of this guy. Software dev busted for outsourcing his own job to China. Eventually, it was discovered the employee had outsourced his own job to a Chinese consulting firm, paying about $50,000 to the firm out of his own salary for several $100,000. In his blog, Mr. Valentine describes the employee as being in his mid-40s, with a relatively long tenure with the company, family man, inoffensive and quiet, someone you wouldn't look at twice in an elevator, ABC News reports. In the blog, Mr. Valentine wrote that according to the man's web browsing history, a typical workday went something like this. 9 a.m. Arrive and surf Reddit for a couple of hours. Watch cat videos. 11:30 a.m. Take lunch. 1 p.m. eBay time, 2-ish p.m. Facebook updates, LinkedIn, 4:30 p.m. End of day update email to management, 5 p.m. Go home. My grandfather pulled this move in the 1960s. Not sure it's possible or even legal anymore, but it was back when business owners had personal relationships with their bankers. Gramps had commercial properties where he rented out office space to businesses. One of his tenants was failing and about to close shop and owed him a bunch of rent to the tune of thousands of dollars. They cut him a check for the rent owed, but asked him to wait a week to deposit/cash it. Gramps knew the company wouldn't be around in a week and he'd never see his money if he waited. He took the check to the bank, they both used the same bank, and tried to cash it. Sure enough, they didn't have enough to cover the check, and the teller told him she couldn't cash it because of insufficient funds. Gramps asked how much they were short, and the teller told him about $200. So Gramps took $200 out of his own wallet and had her deposit it into their account, then cashed his check for the thousands they owed him. The next day, the owners called him furious and in disbelief that he got his check cashed, and cleaned them out at the same time. Instead of lasting another week, they were out of business that day. But Gramps got his money. Well, when you sense you're about to be screwed, grab that screwdriver and go on the offensive, I guess. Maybe not totally genius, but close. I had a colleague who worked at a very large company who was on a temporary promotion to quite a senior position. It was a position that he knew a number of other people in the company were interested in applying for, many of whom were far more qualified than him. The day eventually came when the management decided to fill the post permanently and to start the process by looking for recruits from within the company. He now faced the very real possibility that the well-paid job he'd been doing for about a year might be taken from him and handed to someone from another department. To get the recruitment process underway, the local management asked him to write the ad for the job, which would then appear in the internal job vacancies listings on the company intranet. My colleague saw his opportunity and he seized it with both hands. Firstly, he changed the job title in a way that could be justified, but made the vacancy unrecognizable to anyone skimming through the listings who was specifically looking for it. Secondly, he started the ad by focusing on some of the more obscure aspects of the job, making it sound almost like an entirely different kind of role. He only got to the core parts of the job, that people might recognize, after about 3 paragraphs. It worked brilliantly. No one else applied for the job because it was impossible to identify it from a quick read of the title and opening paragraphs. My colleague was duly appointed to it after a successful interview. I should explain that what made this such a neat trick was that the ad was for a specialist job in a company that had quite a few specialists in that field, but was mostly full of generalists. My colleague changed the title to something that sounded very generalist and also wrote the first 3 paragraphs in a generalist way, only switching to the specialist information in paragraph 4. Why I think it worked so well was because the generalists who might have been drawn to the job by its title and opening paragraphs then gave up when they realized it required specialist skills that they lacked. Meanwhile, the specialists saw only the generalist title and immediately moved on to the next ad, not realizing that it could well have been the perfect job for them. I have been around a lot of manipulation and politicking at various workplaces. I can't stand it, so I don't delve into it. So suffice to say, probably the most genius stuff was happening around me, and I failed to notice it. However, something I was particularly proud of was, when compiling reports, spreadsheets, ad copy, etc., I always typed my name in the lower right-hand corner, but set the color to white. No one sees it, it doesn't print, but when someone, cough cough, manager, cough, sends off your files as his own work to the higher-ups, along goes your signature. It came up in a discussion once where they were debating his data with my own. He had apparently sent alternative ideas in an attempt to discredit my contributions and belittle my capabilities. In a one-on-one meeting, I had them highlight the bottom right corner of all the documents he had sent under his name. They all had my name in the corner. I was working for them 2 months later. New guy in a fancy suit shows up in the office and the company president says, "He's a consultant working for me. Give him whatever he needs." Guy works with us for months, going out to lunch with us all the time, we're all getting on great. Then one day we're in the company meeting, when the president invites him up to the front of the room because he's my new boss, the VP of something or other. This guy steps out from the middle of our group like it's the big reveal of a TV show. He was undercover for the past couple of months. He asked the president to not announce his title during that time so he could investigate our department from the inside without us knowing. I'll add that while undercover, he worked in a cubicle over in the accounting department. Then, after the reveal, he moved into the executive suite. I was chosen as the representative of my senior class in a Scrabble tournament. I was against this junior girl who was the best player in the whole school. Now, I'm not exactly a pathetic player, but this girl was miles ahead in terms of Scrabble skills. It was a best out of 3 type of game, and I have already won the first round simply due to sheer luck. Halfway through the second game, however, I figured that I won't be able to win the round as my score isn't half of hers. So in order to invalidate the round, I purposely placed a wrong word in the board. I was graduating salutatorian for the whole senior class, so she really didn't think I'll get a word wrong, and let the whole game finish. Obviously, she won by a large margin. Lo and behold, one of the teachers came to check the game's progress, and he noted the non-existent word. As per the rules of the game, and the girl's insistence that she can't accept the win given the situation, we redid the whole second round. The next second round ended up in a tie, and by technicality, I actually won the whole tournament. This was probably the first strategic, albeit very manipulative, thing I've done in my life. A German hacker once hacked the source code for Half-Life 2, a video game developed by Valve Corporation, before it released, and Valve was in total panic mode. Gabe Newell, the owner of Valve, however, had a brilliant plan. He messaged the hacker's anonymous profile and told him that he was really impressed by his software genius and wanted to hire him for a new project. Gaben even sent flight tickets to Seattle to him and got a resume for him. Unfortunately for the hacker, Gabe passed his resume on to the FBI and checkmate. Imagine thinking you were the Mike Ross of this situation, only to end up in the logical conclusion for the events you had set in motion. A friend of mine started dating a girl when he was 19 and she was 18. They met at work and over time a romance developed. They were crazy about each other, but there was one problem. She was very religious and he was an atheist. One afternoon, a group of us were hanging out, and someone asked her if it was hard between them with the religious stuff. She told them sometimes it is, but she wasn't worried. She said, "In 5 years, we will be married, have a kid, and he will be going to church with me twice a week." Everyone laughed, especially because they had only been dating a couple of months at the time. Well, she wasn't completely on target. It took her 7 years, and they were married, had a kid, and he had become hyper-religious. I had a friend who essentially engineered his marriage to a very wealthy girl. Her parents are worth tens of millions. He is an extremely intelligent person, and in my personal opinion, a total sociopath. A lot of people don't see it, especially at first, but he's extremely manipulative and is always roundaboutly getting people to do things for him. Anyway, he was a struggling artist and knows that this girl is loaded, so he just targeted her and eventually married her. I knew him pretty well at the time, and it was clear that he didn't really give much of a crap about her. He then convinced her to move to Manhattan away from her family so he could pursue his art career there. They moved into a huge apartment on the 20th floor of a high-rise with an amazing balcony view. I always thought it was kind of effed up because his wife is very overweight, and I think that he used that as leverage in getting what he wanted. I don't know if it exactly fits the question, but it was kinda genius, if totally evil. Don't know the exact details, but I read a story once about a guy who bought a full-fare first-class ticket on an airline. He would go to the airport, hang out in the lounge to get free food and drink, then go down to the desk and reschedule his flight to the next day. Since it was top-tier first-class rate, the airline rescheduled with no fee. Kept doing this for something like a year until the airline caught on and told him they wouldn't reschedule anymore. At this point, he went to the desk and got his 100% refund for the ticket, since that was also airline policy. Crafty, manipulative little tykes, let me tell you. One kid absolutely had to sit in the front of the classroom. The reason for this is that he essentially controlled the other kids by giving them looks. If he was in the front, you at least had to tell because he turned around for a second or two, gave a look, and some kid chucked his maths book across the classroom. Also, after having a few classes with these kids, one kid stayed in the classroom during the break and I asked her what was wrong. Apparently 2 boys in the class were mean to her and calling her names, so I told her I'd tell the original teacher and/or the principal. I was only a sub after all and had no place disciplining children. As I talked to one of the teachers about it, I found out that the problem isn't the boys, it's 2 other girls in the class. See, these 2 girls would tell the boy to go bully this girl and be mean to her. Not because they didn't like the girl, but because they wanted the boys to get told off and disciplined for whatever reason. The bullied girl was just a tool in their eyes. If I ever need a general to confuse and misdirect my enemies in conflict, I'd recruit a 9-year-old girl. I was a general manager at a small vape shop for a while. I asked the owner for a significant raise about a week before he was leaving the country on vacation. I would be solely in charge of the shop while he was gone. I dropped a hint to a sort of friend of his that I would be gone before he got back if I didn't get the raise. I got the raise. Depending on the size of this vendor's business, this seems a little exploitative. Maybe the owner looked for a new GM when he returned. I was playing Cluedo with a girl I was trying to impress and her friends. One of the guys in the friends group was her old crush. During one of my turns, I realized that this guy, highly intelligent mother flipper, is close to the guessing room. During my turn, I decide to ask next person for the cards that I had on my hand. Of course, no one had them, which would suggest that the place, weapon, and murderer are in the bag and are the solution to the game. He took the bait, went to the middle room and guessed all of the cards I had in my hand, effectively costing him the game. He was really surprised and couldn't fathom how that had happened. And this is when I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Unless I had all the cards I had asked for." I know it's petty, but it was enough to impress the girl at the time, and I still recall it fondly. This actually happened to me, and I don't know the actual truth of it, so this is an assumption. I was in a disciplinary hearing at a call center when I was about 20 years old for basically slagging off my manager. She was a member, to my colleague over chat. I said I would rather resign than get sacked. After the meeting, she went to see HR and asked if I would still prefer to resign. I resigned. In hindsight, 14 years later, I don't think I was getting sacked and she bluffed me into resigning, which is fantastic gamesmanship, and even though she was a complete and utter jerk, I respect that. My girlfriend lives in Australia and I live in the US. We don't spend much time together because of the distance, obviously, and because of the time difference in our schedules, we get limited, but fairly consistent amount of time we can spend together online, which is where we normally spend Skyping while playing games. Last summer, she was coming to spend about 5 weeks with me in the US, and we were both insanely excited. About a week before, my family was getting together for an early dinner, which wasn't very common as we all live on our own. My father picked me up to take me to the restaurant, and I walked in the door and saw her sitting with my mum and sister. I was absolutely speechless and couldn't even make a coherent thought. She had planned it out with my mum months in advance, and I had no idea. She sent me pictures and only messaged me at certain times so that I wouldn't catch on while she was taking the 30-hour trip over here. I cannot explain the happiness I felt and the shock I was in. In about 4 months, I'm moving to Australia to live with her, and I've never been happier in my entire life. Someone I know claims to have purposely left a pen cap leaning against a cash register drawer so that the next time their rival coworker opened the drawer, it would fall into the rail, obstructing it from closing. Leaving a register open is a big deal in retail, and apparently this had a domino effect, leading to my acquaintance to be named manager/head cashier. If I recall correctly, the cashier was on a last chance kind of thing, and was one of 2 who could work weekends. So once they were fired, the other person who currently occupied the manager/head cashier job was the other person who could work weekends, making the weekday job available, and by seniority and comparative responsibility, my acquaintance was promoted. Can't verify this actually happened, but the planning was impressive for such a low-stakes job. So I was studying this course in university, which had half of the course in practical assignments. We had to do 10 pracs throughout the semester, and the lecturer decided that the final grade you'd receive would be an average of the 10 submissions. Seemed fair. They had issues with the submission system, and so, trying to be fair, he added a rule where if you submitted late, the grade would be removed from the average. So all I did was submit the first prac on time, got full marks, submitted the rest late, and received an average grade of 100%. About 5 years ago, me and my friends went to Disneyland. One of my friends was a huge fan of the ride Big Thunder Mountain, but the line was like 150 minutes long. I issued 5 fast passes for all of us, and when the staff in the fast pass lane told us to show our passes, I told her I lost 3 of them. She checked the remaining 2 and let us go. Later, after we confirmed a different person was in charge, I showed the staff the 3 passes I was hiding. Basically, we cheated the system and rode the ride twice in the fast pass lane. So petty, yet so satisfying. I was forced to be acting manager for a company I was liking less and less. I had all the responsibility, but not the pay, and I was having to help interview actual managers. I hired someone from a company down the street, then applied there and got his job. That job was the perfect blend of a thing I was good at, well paid for, liked doing, and filled a need. Incidentally, it was my brother playing 2D chess against strangers online when we were little kids. He had an electric chessboard named Igor, and Igor was a mother flipper. We could never beat him unless he was on the lowest setting, and we played a lot of chess as kids. Anyway, my little brother set Igor to the highest level of difficulty and started a game online. The opponent made a move, and my brother would make the same move against Igor. Igor would respond, and he'd copy Igor's move in the online game. He never lost a game with this method. This guy is my hero. I remember the story from ages ago. A man gets a credit card contract through the post. Usual stuff, sign the contract and send it back, get the credit card. He changes the contract terms and conditions to like 0% APR, no limit, no late payment fees, etc. Basically, free money for life. The company doesn't check the contract, countersigns, and sends him the credit card. He maxes it out, the company stops the card, he sues the company, and wins. There is a well-known saying that goes, "Always give the hardest job to the laziest person because they will find the easiest way to do it." What is the best real-life example of this you have seen? I was once a temp at a tiny office on a construction site in around 2003. I was only there for one day while the regular person was on some training. They sat me down and told me that I just needed to copy all these numbers from one program to another. So I selected them, hit Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V. Turns out about 60% of this woman's time had been manually typing the numbers from one place to another. I work in finance at a large multinational corporation. I feel like a big part of our job is just stop doing things and wait to see who complains. If someone complains, we keep doing it. If silence, then we call it a controlled drop and put it on our performance review for creating efficiencies. I worked in a CNC shop. There would be a pile of jobs that needed to be done for the month. Some took days to run, while others were generally quick. The record for jobs done in one day was 8. What I did was looked through all the jobs and organized them by setup, meaning every job has a setup time. Can take an hour to get all the tooling together, setting up the cutting table, and setting the parts square to the table so the machine can gauge where the part is. So when I insert the code into the machine, it can run flawlessly and drill, mill, tap, whatever within literally hair measurement, for every single job. Majority of parts use standard tooling, and I have automatic tool changing with 20 pockets. Long story short, I figured out how to line up jobs so they all have the same setup. Blew the record out of the water with 30 jobs done in one day, saving the company tens of thousands of work hours. All because I didn't feel like doing all the setups that day. I worked at a summer at a mortgage company as an assistant to the underwriters. My only job was printing documents and then hole punching them to put in folders. They had a super fancy Xerox printer that basically did my entire job for me, but the underwriters at this company didn't know how to click through printer settings to make the machine hole punch as it was being printed. I showed them how to do it, and they resisted it super hard. Like they didn't trust it, I don't know. So I got to keep my job, but what was supposed to take me all day literally took me 20 to 30 minutes first thing in the morning. So they started assigning me real tasks, and even offered to keep me on to eventually become an underwriter too, because I was so sharp. I.e., I knew how to use the very expensive printer they already had. I was just about to start grad school, so I had to politely decline, but I'm pretty sure they didn't hire someone to replace me when I left. In conclusion, they had a printer that already did my job for me, but didn't know how to use it. I showed them. Maybe not the most impressive story here, but I thought it was a great sidestep of effort nonetheless. Coworker of mine had to get rid of smaller junk fiberglass boat with no trailer. Our other coworkers are all telling him how much time and money he's going to need to get rid of it, and he's just saying, "Oh, is that so?" He took off one day and sat down on his lawn with a cooler of beer. That day was garbage day. Inevitably, the trash guys rolled up. He hands each of them a cold beer and says, "Hey boys, got $50 for each of you if you help me out real quick." They fed the entire 12-foot boat into the packer, crushing 2 feet at a time. I used to process HSA claims around 10 years ago. One system we had to use back then was an old-as-hell terminal program that took 4-line items per page. That's it. For a usual claim, no big deal. Not too hard to keep track of things over 2 to 3 pages. For a longer claim, most fit on 1. However, we had the dreaded shoebox claims. This was the person who saved up every receipt all year in a metaphorical shoebox and sent everything in once a year to empty their account. We hated them. Dozens or hundreds of line items totaling thousands of dollars. Just because you only have $500 in your HSA doesn't mean we get to stop there. If you sent in $4,000 in receipts, I've got to account for all of it. totally killed your numbers for the day, and they tracked claims per hour religiously. The main issue was double-checking that everything added up right when you were done entering it. At 4 items a page, it took forever to tally. So I made an Excel sheet. It was laid out so I could enter every single line, then run a macro that would calculate the needed totals and dump all the text to a text file formatted exactly, so I could select 4 items at a time and paste them directly into the terminal window from the default starting cursor positions, and every field would fill in automatically. Copy, paste, next, copy, paste, next, copy, paste, next, etc. It easily halved my entry times with way less work. Finding any typos was much easier. I just had to look at one column organized sheet instead of scrolling through God knows how many pages of terminal text. It was great. I showed it to my manager so the rest of my team could use it. She was horrified I would use something like that, as no human was double-checking as they went along. This despite demonstrable improvements to my error rates on large claims after I started using it. She ordered me to stop using it and forbid anyone else in her team from automating any part of their job at all. I kept using it for all of the 2 months I stayed there after that. I had some of the highest claim per hour numbers and lowest error rates on her team. I never developed any more tools for them. Flip her. I wonder if this individual ever got found out, but hopefully if they have, their results speak for themselves. Worked as a cashier during the holiday season back when I was 16. The supermarket was selling drinks by the boxes, and at that time we only had barcode scanners that was at the front of the computer. No gun-type scanners existed. I was lazy and didn't want to carry boxes up to the scanner, so I politely asked the customers if I could carve out the barcode from their box to scan and keep. Some agreed, some didn't want to, but eventually I managed to amass all the barcodes needed, labeled them and kept them in a file for easy reference. Apparently, some other cashier got green-eyed at my smart move and complained to the chief cashier, who promptly lectured me on, bullcrap alert, how it's dangerous for me to scan such barcodes as I might scan the wrong things. She told me to throw it all away and carry the boxes like I was meant to. I mean, I was young, so I could, but the other cashiers were older and some were elderly and needed the customers themselves to help carry the boxes to the scanner. But whatever, I guess jealousy trumps common sense. Was a temp. Got hired for the day to print 30 packets with 100 pages each. Why would it take a day? I asked. Our printer doesn't collate the pages, so it will take you the day to sort the pages into the 30 packets, they said. Right. It was a standard office Xerox printer. It took me all of 30 seconds to find and click the collate button. Clicked the staple button while at it. All got printed by itself into a nice stapled packet, and I got paid to browse internet for the day. They thought I was a genius for fixing their printer and gave me glowing recommendations to the temp agency that led to more jobs. Well, there's our second just use the feature included in the office equipment story for the day. Funny that. At my last job, a truck suspension shop, we did inventory every December, and it was someone's job to count out all the washers and screws of every size. It was my first inventory, and I casually mentioned that they should just weigh one screw or washer, then weigh them all and divide the weight to get the count. Everyone looked at me like I had given them the key to the universe. Counting washers and screws went from a day or two to just a few hours. Herding yak with a drone takes the cake for me. They run from it and oddly fear it, which is surprising considering they have literally 0 aerial predators. We only did it a few times because it really makes them uneasy and it doesn't treat them well. But it is very effective and easy, and you can herd them from over half a mile away from inside the house. Automated 70% of my job in a large finance firm as an intern. Never disclosed it and got easy money for 6 months. I spent the time doing courses and applying for my grad school. Got my admission letter during the final 2 weeks of my internship and never looked back. Pro tip, Python and Excel can be your best friend. Worked in a huge hotel by the airport. We had a layover with over 400 people. I think we were 3 employees. They had buffet for dinner and then left to go to bed since it was 1 or 2 a.m. Rule was we should always go to the room and pick up as many plates as we could and then bring them to the cleaner. Took us ages and I wanted to go home. I decided to roll out the cart and collect the plates and put them on the cart. Guests were seeing it and started putting their plates on the cart when they left. All of a sudden, hundreds of people cleaned up their own stuff. Duty manager saw it and I thought he would blast me since the hotel was a 5-star place. He just looked at me, smiled and said, "That's why I like to hire lazy people. They think of ways to finish work faster." I have an example of how the truly lazy will sabotage tracking so no one knows stuff is broken. There was this guy at a software company that does integrated software systems. He hated his boss at his job and apparently most of his team. Every time he was assigned a bug to fix, he would mark it resolved and assign it a no-reply email address associated with the team. The odd thing that I don't understand is how he managed to keep issues from getting escalated to other real people. At any rate, no one caught on. When he found a new job and a couple of people on his team took him out for drinks, he said, "You should look back into all the bugs I fixed. I never did any of that." So the guys who took him out for drinks went back and audited his work and were like, "Holy F! Not only did he do nothing, he hid identified issues for like a year." Must have been an EA Games dev. Was tiling a bathroom floor. One young guy I was working with was cleaning up when we were done. I told him to take the leftover tile downstairs to the truck, and then went back to cleaning what I was doing. 10 seconds later, I hear this huge crash and then a soft, "Oh, right." He had gone out onto the balcony and dropped them down into the truck, shattering over $100 worth of tile. He said he thought it would be faster. He wasn't wrong. I'm in corporate accounting, and I'm the only one in my department with a CPA. Of course, I have to take continuing education for my license, and I usually take as many hours of Excel courses as I can each year. By learning the keyboard shortcuts, advanced formulas, and a bunch of useful hidden features in Excel, I'm able to get most of my work done in less than 2 hours, then spend the rest of the day browsing Reddit and watching YouTube videos. Thank goodness our cubicle walls are high, or I'm sure they would have fired me by now for being on my phone 6+ hours a day. I look back at my time in corporate accounting and often realize just how much effing around I did at work, with literally no consequence. Other than month-end close, I feel like I sat on Reddit a solid 4+ hours a day. If I had improved my Excel to the point of knowing how to write macros, I would have been on 7/8 of the day. It made a lot of sense why the company I worked for decided to push for job documentation for 2 years, and then outsourced the work to offshore accountants. Sometimes I wish I was still in that job, and some days I'm very, very happy that I changed careers. There's a story that I've heard a few dozen times about a toothpaste company that had accidentally sent out cases of their product that had a few empty single boxes of toothpaste. The company had endeavored not only to rectify their mistake, but to ensure they did not repeat it. They hired an engineering company that designed a scale and an alarm shutdown system. If an empty carton was passed down the production line, klaxons would be triggered and a full stop would initiate until the offending box was recovered and an all clear had been entered into the computer system before production could resume. The company paid through the nose, but was ultimately pleased with their failsafe, and the engineers patted each other on the back. A few months pass and the engineers returned for quality control. The toothpaste company reported zero margin of error for weeks. Turns out, one of the minimum wage hairnet types on the assembly line didn't appreciate the sound of klaxons or working with the computers, so he or she had aimed a large fan at the production line before the scale that blew the lighter, empty cartons off the conveyor belt. Problem solved. Amazing. By teeing off the regular workforce with annoying alarms, the engineers motivated the factory workers to solve the problem themselves, after several thousand in R&D into the scale system. During my internship, my professor gave me line graphs on paper and asked me to find the coordinates by drawing horizontal and vertical lines. It would have taken hours, if not days. I thought to myself, I couldn't be the first one who is lazy AF. So I googled it, found this cool free-to-use software, Web Digitizer. Step 1. Scan the graph. Step 2. Mark the X and Y axes in the picture. Step 3. Grab a beer because you've got the nicest mother-flipping graph you couldn't have drawn yourself in a million years. My professor was so happy, she asked me to document the method and mail it across the entire department. Yes, I did share my original method with my professor and the entire department. 1, she was a really supportive professor, and I wanted to return her favors, even if the software might have been the tiniest help to her work. 2, the original developer of the software made it available online for free. He could have made it a paid service, and believe me, researchers would have paid because it is that good. But he kept it free for all of us to use, and it was my responsibility to share his work as much as I could. Got hired into a plant that just got a new big job building stuff for the military. My job was materials associate, which basically meant I drove a forklift and staged parts that were built. The engineers came up with a floor plan for all the parts and where they needed to be staged. They used fancy lasers and measuring devices and built it all in CAD. After telling them it wouldn't work, they said, "Well, let's see you do a better job." I organized the 50,000 square foot warehouse so that each part was close to the machines that used them. It followed the first in, first out method, and each department knew where their parts went when they were done making them, by putting up signs and whatnot. After that, my job was basically pointless because the warehouse ran itself. I decided to teach myself how to use the welding robots in my downtime. Fast forward 3 years and now I'm an automation engineer at one of the largest parts suppliers in the industry. P.S. Robots are very easy to learn and operate if you're struggling to find what you want to do in your career. Places are hiring with minimal experience too because there is a lack of people in the automation field. Get a 1-year college certification in mechatronics and you can make around $40,000 to $60,000 starting, depending on location. Back when I was a cashier at Borders, we had to keep a certain percentage of Borders rewards transactions. I was good at my job and was able to get into the high 80s, low 90s every month by being a good salesman and convincing them to get it. There was another guy I worked with that had an insanely high percentage, and I didn't understand how he did it. We later came to find out that he would just swipe a card and put it into people's bags without saying anything about it. He got caught and was given a warning and put on probation instead of being fired for cheating. Fast forward about a month and I find out he's getting promoted to work on the floor with all the movies and stuff. I could not believe they promoted him after all that stuff and looked me over. Someone that was actually a hard worker that did a really good job and often would have people compliment me to my managers. Then again, the management there was crap. I eventually got fired from there because the guy covering for me while I was on vacation got fired, and they somehow expected me to know and come in. In high school, we do 4 book reports every year. A friend of mine did his on each Lord of the Rings book and The Hobbit freshman year, and turned in the same 4 book reports for the rest of his time in high school. You switched English teachers every year, so nobody ever caught on. I was never brave enough to try the same thing. I once ordered a painter to paint my bathroom walls. His price was pretty extortionate for the small job, and he only had a relatively small brush to complete it. It was a pretty lousy paint job because of the small brush, so a few weeks later I finally convinced myself to get another painter, but just a cheap one to go over the bad job done by this other guy. Instead of using just a brush, he had a huge roller, and consequentially got the job done much quicker. He did a great job and charged significantly less than the other guy. Lee from Lee's Painting, wherever you are, thanks. I was once on a US military ship having breakfast in the wardroom, the officer's lounge, when the operations officer, OPS, walks in. This guy was the definition of not a morning person. He's still half asleep, bleary-eyed, basically a zombie with a bagel. He sits down across from me to eat his bagel and is just barely conscious. My back is on the outboard side of the ship, and the morning sun is blazing in on one of the portholes, putting a big, bright circle of light right on his barely conscious face. He's squinting and chewing and basically just remembering how to be alive for today. It's painful to watch. But then zombie OPS stops chewing, slowly picks up the phone and dials the bridge. In his well-known, "I'm still totally asleep" voice, he says, "Hey, it's OPS. Could you shift our bar past? Yeah, 165. Thanks." And puts the phone down, and then he just sits there, squinting, waiting. And then, ever so slowly, I realize that big blazing spot of sun has begun to slide off the zombie's face onto the wall behind him. After a moment, it clears his face and he blinks slowly a few times, and the brilliant beauty of what I've witnessed begins to overwhelm me. By ordering the bridge to adjust the ship's back and forth patrol by about 15 degrees, he's changed our course just enough to reposition the sun off his face. He's literally just redirected thousands of tons of steel and hundreds of people so that he could get the sun out of his eyes while he eats his bagel. I am in awe. He slowly picks up his bagel, and for a moment I'm terrified at the thought that his own genius may escape him, that he may never appreciate the epic brilliance of his laziness, since he's not going to wake up for another hour. But between his next bites, he pauses, looks at me, and gives me the faintest sly grin before returning to gnaw slowly on his zombie bagel. In high school, I had an absolute butthole of a teacher. He gave me a binder that had the name, address, phone of every student in the entire district, including the names of all their siblings. I was to type this in even though it was already printed out. I asked if it was already printed, why was I typing it? He said they paid an outside firm a bunch of money to do it, but the state pulled the funding and the firm refused to provide the files. And now the district didn't have the money to do it again, but they still needed the data. I was super teed off about how tedious of a job I was given, and complained to no end. He knew that I was the winner of a typing contest and agreed that this one project would be my entire grade for the semester. If I could manage to get it all entered into the computer by the end of the year, I'd get a passing grade. If not, I'd fail. After about 2 hours of data entry, I decided it was a bullcrap job and downloaded OCR software, scanned the whole thing in, and spent a day or two correcting scanning mistakes. My plan was to spend the rest of the semester goofing off and pretending to work. That lasted about a week before the teacher caught on. He then proceeded to start giving me more stupid, tedious work and said the previous deal was now off. I found out that part of the reason the deal with the consulting firm ended badly was his fault, and told him I was going to the school board with this information. We decided on a new plan. My grade for the semester would pass as an A, but I had free time to take on other classes the teacher offered. I used this free time to complete 1.5 other courses. In conclusion, my laziness got me 2.5 course credits in the span of time that I would have only gotten 1.
Police officers of Reddit, what was your "they could have gotten away with it if they had kept their mouth shut" moment? I had a car pass me once where a passenger hangs the upper half of his body out of the passenger side window with his middle finger in the air while screaming, "Muck the police!" He had my attention for the seatbelt violation. I got behind the car and ran the registration. Registration is suspended. Registered owner's driver's license is attached to the registration and his license is suspended. Registered owner also has 2 warrants for retail theft. I stopped the car and they both started with the free speech thing and how I can't stop them for giving me the fingers, which is 100% correct. When I pointed out that I can, however, stop them for the passenger not wearing a seatbelt and for the registration violation, suddenly they both got quiet. Driver got arrested for suspended license and his warrants, and the passenger got himself a citation. The driver's vehicle got impounded. Moral of the story? Tell your passengers to shut their mouths. Had that guy not been a moron, his buddy would have been homeward bound. Not a cop, but a public defender had a client who made a long statement that didn't help her case, but the judge was letting her go without setting bail. Before leaving the courtroom, however, I was informed that the police from another precinct were coming to pick her up, and she'd be held until they did. They didn't get her until much later, but I told her to absolutely not say anything to them, to keep her mouth shut. The next day I go to do her arraignment, and I get the notice of any statements, which started with, "My lawyer told me not to say anything, but this is what happened," and admitted to a variety of crimes. It was frustrating, to say the least. Not a police officer, but I do know of this house in my local village that was a notorious den of illegal substances. The police came to search that place but couldn't find anything, and as they were leaving, the lovely owner yelled at them that they should have brought the dogs. So yeah, they came back a few days later with the illegal substance sniffing dogs and found huge amounts of that hidden away. Absolute morons. When I was growing up, a cop approached my mom, who's an attorney, at our house. She closed the door behind her, and I watched the interaction inside with my doggo. Now, my mom was always very honest with me about criminal stuff. She probably wanted to scare me out of committing crimes, something that largely worked. She comes back inside a good 30 minutes later and tells me about the stupidest dealers ever. Guy and girlfriend sell mad amount of illegal substances just down the block from my house. They are the big boy distributors of the area. It's a decent-sized city, but on the smaller side, so I don't know how the heck the illegal substance scene works. And the cops have been hoping to bring these guys down. Well, the cops caught a break when they confessed to a dispatcher. Turns out they were robbed by a rival dealer, and their computer was stolen. This is the early 2000s, so desktops were pretty clunky, along with all of their illegal substance. They called 911 and proceeded to tell them all of these details, somehow never realizing their stupidity. The cops swooped in, the station is literally 2 minutes away, and arrested the lot of them, and then told my mom everything. They were in our neighborhood, and my mom knows and is loved by everyone. Moral of the story? When reporting your house is being robbed, maybe leave out the part where all of your illegal substances was stolen. I'm really curious how that conversation actually went down over the phone. 911, what's your emergency?
Oh, thank God. Everything's been robbed. I'm reporting a robbery.
Okay.
My new Dell computer and all my illegal substances are gone.
Oh, please go on.
The white stuff, the powder, the sugar cherries, all the wings. It's the good stuff.
Yep. We'll come pick you up in a couple minutes.
Honey, I did it. I told them everything. Oh, God, I told them everything.
I was asked to help keep the peace while 2 probation officers searched a guy's house. In most jurisdictions, you have to submit to a search of your person and your home if you're on probation. During the search, a PO lifted the probationer's mattress and said monotonously, "Wow." The probationer got upset and said, "Yeah, it's freaking snow in my piece. Arrest me. I don't give a freak." Turns out the PO found a huge naughty toy, but after the guy opened his mouth, the PO lifted the mattress more and found a bunch of individually wrapped grams of snow and a weapon. The PO said that seeing the naughty toy was enough for him to ignore the mattress, but because the guy said something, he kept looking. That guy's attitude and his need to open his mouth got him 10 years in prison. Not me, but my boyfriend. Boyfriend's working overnight when a guy comes through town doing 35 miles per hour in a 25-mile area. Boyfriend pulls the guy over and asks for his documentation, license, registration, insurance. Guy flips open his glove box, snatches his documents out, and snaps the glove box closed super fast. Boyfriend laughs and says, "What do you have in there?" Guy gets a little sheepish and says, registration, insurance, a little bit of leaf. Boyfriend, "What?" Guy coughs and says, "Registration, insurance, and a little bit of leaf." Boyfriend laughs again and says, seriously? Can I see?" Guy got a slap on the wrist for being honest and having a very small amount. Currently watching live PD, and the guy told the officer, "I have caffeine pills in my back pocket." Gets them out, puts them on the hood. Everyone's chill. The dude then comes clean and says it's Molly, and the officers look at each other and go, "Do we even have a test kit for that?" Other officer says, "No." Dude's face just shows he should have kept his mouth shut. I saw PD as well, ironically in my hometown, where a woman pulled off the highway unnecessarily with another car that the cop initially intended to pull over. She mentioned to the cop that she wanted to have a few words with the other vehicle because they were being rumpholes and trying to race her. This is why the cop pulled the other car over, because they were speeding. Anyways, officer tells her no and that she needs to leave, and that it would not only be unsafe but also illegal if she got out of her vehicle like that on the side of the highway. She says, "Okay, whatever." Cop proceeds to speak with the other vehicle, and she is still parked there, now yelling out her window at the other vehicle. Both the cop and the people are laughing, and he still does nothing. Cop goes to write the speeding ticket, and this witch gets out of her car and approaches the other vehicle. He finally freaking cuffed her and put her in the squad car, all the while she's complaining that it's completely unfair, was completely dumbfounded. Okay, so we had a DUI accident where a guy kept driving straight into the woods into a tree because his GPS was predicting a future street. He walked back to his hotel room and left his check and papers in the car. So we go to the hotel and go to his room and knock on the door. He did not have to answer, but he did. He was pretty clearly intoxicated. I asked him if he had anything to drink since the accident. He did not have to answer, or he could have told us that he drank after the accident. He said, "No, I haven't had anything to drink since the accident." And where I'm from, you have 24 hours to report a property damage only accident, so it wasn't even a hit and run. So, as I'm locking the guy up, he tells me he's a lawyer. I told him, "I hope you're not a defense attorney." But in his defense, he was intoxicated. I can respect that. A man who follows his GPS, his Siri, all the way to the end. Turn left. "But Siri, that's just the ocean. Are you sure that's the way to Disney World?" "Yes, turn left. Do it now." "Okay, here we go." "Yes, another one." When I was in high school, I liked to park in parking spots that cars had parked poorly into just as a muck you. One time, I was at a high school football game and a Jeep had parked like crap. He was nearly halfway into the spot next to him and parked at an angle. I was driving a 98 Chevy Silverado at the time, a big old pickup truck, and I had my brother help guide me into the spot so I was perfectly in the lines. That made it so the driver door was completely impossible to get in. I took a picture for the novelty of it and went on my way. When I got back to my car, the Jeep was gone and every panel on the passenger side of my car was keyed. There was an officer nearby, so I told him about it and showed him the picture. He told me there's not a lot they could do because there were no witnesses, but he'd give it a shot. He looked up their license plate, called them, and asked them if they had done it. They confessed and ended up having to pay $1,600 in restitution along with getting a felony. My friend was pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt while he was with a few buddies, gets handed his ticket, and the guy in the back seat says, "Am I going to get a ticket too?" Officer replies, "Well, were you wearing a seatbelt?" No." "All right. Can I see your ID?" Not really the brightest fella. I don't know why, but I love how, he was excited by this. Hey, oh, come on, man. Can I have a ticket?
Yeah, me too. Come on, I want one. Let's all get one.
Oh, shucks. All right, kids. Everyone gets a ticket today. Hooray!
I pull over this guy for expired tabs, ask for his ID, and he's feeling around for his wallet. Can't find it. He says, man, I'm one of you. It's cool." "Oh, what department?" "Oh, actually, I'm a security guard, but same thing." I'm polite. "So, where's your ID?" "Oh, it's in the..." And he motions to the trunk. "It's in the trunk?" "Actually, no." My BS radar is going off. "Okay. You want to get your ID out of the trunk?" Nah, I don't have it." He starts looking around for another story to use, but now I know I'm supposed to stay out of the trunk. He's also not giving me any more information. "No ID, then I have to take you in and get you fingerprinted." I'm going to get in that trunk one way or another. He's looking like he's lost. I ask him what's in the trunk, but he's not talking anymore. We pull him out and get him in cuffs. Another officer takes him to get ID through fingerprints. Since his car is expired past 6 months, California laws, we tow the car. In the process of getting ready to tow the car, we need to take a quick inventory. In the trunk was a police uniform with fake patches and a metal badge. No weapon, but a duty belt. He also has stacks of explicit imagery of children. This is a guy who a neighboring city had been looking for months. His MO was to dress as a police officer, talk to kids, and you can figure out the rest. If he just gave me his name, I could have looked up his ID and verified he had one. I'd probably have let him go, but the neighboring city had zero information as to his name. They only had a vague description of the car and the fact he was posing as a police officer. In fact, what he would do is start talking to a kid in the 9 to 12-year-old range, tell him he has to be taken in for questioning, and handcuff the kid and take him to his car. He was a bad dude. So this happened a few years ago. I was patrolling my buddy at night. It was almost the end of our shift. Suddenly, we get an alert that a local nearby gas station had just been robbed, unsuccessfully, and that the suspect was supposed to pass by us in a red car. Indeed, seconds later, we saw a man speeding through the road. Details on the side, we ended up catching him on a dead-end street. When my buddy was handcuffing the suspect, I asked the suspect if he had something to do with the robbery. He repeatedly said,
I've never been there. Ask the ginger lady."
Turns out the cashier that night was an old lady named Marcy, covering up for her ill daughter, whom would have never been able to identify him since he was wearing a black mask during the robbery, which we never found. Marcy had ginger hair. Fortunately, the suspect was kind enough to inadvertently confess the crime. How could he know the appearance of the cashier if he had never been at the crime scene? The jury thought the same. Fellow officers stopped a car for a turn violation. Guy's wannabe illegal substance dealer, who we've seen around the bars before. We were talking with him and asked permission to search his car. He agrees. I'm bullcrapping with them about sports and weather, and the officer finds a duffel bag. So I joke and say, nothing in there that's dangerous, right? Like bombs or grenades or explosives. He nods and says, "Yeah, a bunch of dynamite." I'm waiting for him to laugh or smile or shrug or do something that screams it's a joke. Nothing. I say, "I'm going to open the bag and look, okay?" Expecting at any moment he will stop me. He doesn't. It was 8 sticks of dynamite he stole from a construction site. Separate story. If he didn't say anything, I would have ignored the bag thinking it was tools. He was getting supplies from an MC to terminate someone. Needless to say, he went to prison for a few years. Pulled a guy over because his car was looking pretty run down. Wanted to lecture him that he shouldn't be driving around at night with only half his lights working. We got out of our car, and I approached the driver window, and he looks at me and says, "Yeah, all right, I admit it. I smoked some leaf." Alrighty then. Wanted to give him another chance. "What? We know your lights are broken." "No, I smoked the leaf." Cue the eye roll. "Gosh darn it, man." So we parked his car and drove him to have a blood test done. We were already done with our shift for an hour because we waited for a long time for the doc. So when we got out, I was ready to go home. He turns to me and says, "I can't call anyone to pick me up or I'll get in trouble." Good Samaritan kicks in, ends up driving the guy home. He's a chill dude, obviously. I don't know what happened to him afterwards. He probably lost that internship we were talking about. Some idiots from my hometown broke into a few houses in the early 2000s. Among several stolen items was a handheld video camera. They proceeded to record themselves breaking into several more houses and posing back home with their haul. Several of the items, including said camera, ended up at pawn shops. Well, when the battery died, they didn't remove the tape. As is customary, the pawn shop found a compatible charger and watched the recordings. Copies of their fingerprints, IDs, and the video were turned into the police, and these morons went to jail. Almost everything from the videos was recovered from area pawn shops. Not a cop, but I have a buddy that is. Nothing too crazy, but he's had countless moments where he's tried to give people a break, or all they had to do was sit down and be quiet, but they end up talking themselves into jail. Recently had a dude he pulled over that was a bit over the limit for a DUI, but not too much, so he was going to let a friend pick him up instead of arresting him. Guy got to talking and basically revealed driving under the influence was something he did fairly regularly. A single mistake is one thing, but my buddy decided the best chance at getting him to stop would be learning the lesson the hard way. Not a cop. I had a roommate in college that was no friend of mine. He got in a fight at a bar and was kicked out. He tried to go back into the bar and got thrown out again, but a cop happened to be driving by the second time. The cop told him to relax or he was going to be arrested, and he told the cop to arrest him. The cop handcuffs him and puts him in the back of the cop car. Roommate then started banging on the window. Cop then recuffed him with his hands behind his back. Roommate's stupidity carried on for the next couple of months. He was supposed to go to court over the whole thing but didn't show up. Police showed up at his job, cuffed him, and brought him to court. Judge told him he would have just received a slap on the wrist, but he now had to send him to jail for a couple of days. He was scheduled to report to jail a week or two later, and he didn't show up for that either. By this time, he disappeared. I never saw the guy again. Not a cop, but a witness. During college, my friends and I would hang out outside and smoke hookah. Frequently, we would invite strangers who passed by to join, or campus police would casually chat with us as they made their rounds. So, one time, a group of freshmen walked past and asked to join. After about 15 minutes, the campus police car rolls up and the freshmen get visibly nervous. We tell them to calm down. The cops are chill. As soon as the cop gets out of the car, one freshman bolts and he makes it about 20 feet before the cop tackles him. We all clap and heckle the kid. Upon searching him, the cop finds a bunch of leaf. Then he says, "You realize prior to running I had no reason to be suspicious? I just wanted to talk to my friends over there," and points at us. The cop ends up writing a ticket and sends him off. In college, after an early football game, we had a large group at my house. We were planning on partying, but there was a really good game on, so everyone was just sitting around watching the game. We were about 50-50, underage, ages 20 to 22. There were a few people who had beers, but the drinking had not started. People were flowing in steadily, and I guess the neighbors saw the amount of cars and called the cops to file a noise complaint at 7 p.m. There was a knock at the door and someone said, "Come in." In walks a cop. I surveyed the room to realize everyone who had a beer was over 21, except one. Just as the officer was about to speak, she takes off and dives from the couch to behind the kitchen counter. The cop pauses, shakes his head, said there was a noise complaint, but he had been sitting outside for 10 minutes and hasn't heard a word. Said to enjoy the game, looks at the kitchen, shakes his head again, and walks out. Luckily, I lived in the town next door to the college, or it would have been a rough night. This situation came from a friend of mine. So we lived with 3 other guys in a 4-bedroom apartment. One day, when only one roommate was home, the police came knocking. They asked if they could come in and search for suspected illegal substance usage. Here's where I should mention the roommate who was home was kind of an oblivious shut-in who spent most of his day playing World of Warcraft or Magic the Gathering in his room. So of course he says, "Sure, come on in," having no idea what his roommates have been up to. In room 1, they find nothing, as that was the oblivious guy's room. Room 2, they find a personal bag of leaf. Room 3, they find a pipe. Roommate 3 didn't smoke, but he and roommate 2 played video games a lot, so it belonged to roommate 2. In room 4, they find a possession with intent to distribute, giant bag of leaf. Apparently just a crap load. Roommate 2 told me it was the most leaves he'd ever seen in one place, and he was angry because he always bought from someone else. Didn't know his roommate was a dealer. 3 of the 4 get arrested, only one who didn't was the guy who let them in. My friend was roommate 3, charges against him got dropped because roommate 2 fessed up to the pipe being his and got a slap on the wrist. Not sure what happened to roommate 4, they never saw him again.
Students, what's your "well, that happened" moment in the classroom? At my school, we sometimes have dogs come and check the lockers for illicit substances. They always announce it like, "Teachers, please do not let students leave the classroom for the next bit of time." Everyone knows what it means, and one kid in my class grabbed his bag and jumped over 3 desks and ran out of the classroom. Turns out he was an entrepreneur of sorts. A physics class in community college. Professor was explaining conservation of angular momentum and had a kid sit on a tall chair that spins. He then had the kid hold 2 books out with extended arms and then spin as fast as he can before telling the kid to pull the books in close to his chest. Think of a figure skater and how they spin really fast. The kid immediately turns into a blur and the stool/chair starts to tip slightly until it rockets from under him like it was shot from a slingshot. The kid slams into the floor as if he got choke-slammed, and his head hit the floor in a way that sounded like someone dropped an overly ripe melon. The look on the professor's face said, "Well, that was a good run. Guess I have to find a new career now." Kid turned out okay, and everyone got a laugh, but it genuinely looked like I just witnessed a death. This wasn't my class, but it was the talk of the school for a while. A well-liked teacher gave her class a free workday and offered to play some music. Upon opening her iTunes, she found a file named Transformers MP4. Curious, she opened it. It turned out to be a hardcore adult flick that blasted through the entire class at full volume. Panicking, she couldn't figure out how to shut it off, so she ran the laptop, open and still blasting at full volume, down the hallway to the office to reduce exposure to students. It turns out the superintendent's son used one of the shared servers to browse and download the video, so it was accessible by every computer connected to the school network. The superintendent resigned a couple of years later. In high school physics, we were waiting for the teacher to show up, and another physics teacher from another class comes in with a bowling ball and says, "Do you guys think I can dribble this?" Everyone just looks at him incredulously, and he begins to repeatedly and heavily strong-arm the bowling ball onto the floor hard enough for it to rebound high enough that he can keep the momentum going. People start to laugh, but after about 5 or 6 bounces, the ball splits in half as it hits the floor. He quickly scoops up the halves, holds a conspiratorial finger to his lips, and shuffles out the door. About 15 seconds later, our physics teacher comes in, looks at the few dusty chips of bowling ball on the floor, and asks, "What was all that noise? What's this mess on the floor?" A kid fell out of the restroom ceiling and broke the whole ceiling, and in a different classroom, someone got thrown across the room into a wall. Guy with anger issues started yelling at the teacher and then slapped her across the face. Keep in mind this fat kid was huge and the teacher was this old, tiny Asian woman. The nicest guy in the class smokes the guy with a sucker right hand and just puts the guy out cold. When my teacher brought his samurai sword and started yelling random samurai cries while trying to teach us about ancient Japan. Quite the period we had that day. When I fell asleep in the first row, and the professor and the other students started clapping to wake me up, and when I woke up, I also started clapping like a moron. 2 things you need to know. First, there was this guy at my school whom I've now known for 25 years. His thing is to scream, "Frick yeah!" at everything. He's done it since I've known him. In case it wasn't obvious, frick is a YouTube-friendly term for what he actually said. Anytime someone mentions Matt, someone always adds a "Frick yeah!" He is huge and very loud. When he comes in the bar, he announces his presence with an exuberant "Frick yeah!" If he calls you, you say hello and he yells "Frick yeah!" You get the picture. Second, my senior year. It was a thing to sneak vodka into the school in Cinnabon mugs. For some inexplicable reason, plastic Cinnabon mugs were like a huge thing. Sashaying around flaunting your Cinnabon mug. Rolls eyes. Anyway, I'm in post-lunch class one day and one of the Cinnabon vodka girls ups and starts puking bright, hot, pink, fruity vomit out the window behind her. Then she stood up and screamed, "Woo! Frick yeah!" at the top of her lungs with her face covered in puke. Frick yeah dude is also in this class, so he immediately screams, "Frick yeah!" back. Then she yells, "Frick yeah!" and they go back and forth yelling, "Frick yeah! Frick yeah!" getting progressively louder with each one until the teacher gets her and ushers her out of the room. The rest of us just sat there like, WTF was that all about? This happened like 2 to 3 semesters ago at my college. I was in finance class about 10 minutes from it ending. It was around 2:30, and I had to work at 4:30. Planned on hitting the gym between. Typical day, was getting ready to go by drinking my pre-workout in the last 10 minutes of class. Well, it turns out someone had a different plan. We get an email that the school is in a legitimate lockdown. There is a questionable man on campus with a tactical vest and large backpack walking around campus. Oh boy. So here's the reactions to this information. 50% of the class immediately panics. No idea what to do, huddles in the corner texting their loved ones, one chick bawling her eyes out, making all the noise, puked in the corner. Sick. Foreign exchange student whips out his laptop and starts a League of Legends game, getting visibly agitated at the back of the room. Frickin' Yasuo, am I right? Teacher breaks a piece of metal off the vent and stands by the door prepared to what looks like kill Julius Caesar. Professor in the adjacent room, connecting door, walks in and explains that we should all calm down because worst case scenario is we die and we get a cool plaque with our name on it in the hallway. This does not help the students already having anxiety, may I note. I'm over here, phone dying, absolutely yeeted to crap on pre-workout, with the inability to expend this energy, wondering if I'll get fired for a no-call, no-show and feeling 99% peed off rather than scared. Look to the left out the window, SWAT team on the roof.jpg. Had this sketchy man come into our room. I'm of the utmost confidence that he would have walked away without harming a single human, simply because it was apparent that God left this classroom a long time ago, and we were in more hysteria alive than dead. Anyways, 2.5 hours later, I'm able to call my boss after we were allowed to leave and tell him that the kid who got reported as simply a student going to class and had a big backpack. There was no vest. The kid who reported him had already gotten into trouble for trying to start a racial conflict a week prior and had just had an agenda to push. The amount of pissed I was immeasurable. In a full auditorium, a random guy from a higher year entered. He yelled, "Ladies, this one's for you," and then proceeded to take off his shirt and trousers, his boxers still on, luckily. He then flexed his biceps and did different poses in front of hundreds of students sitting there, not knowing how to react. He then left saying, "Sorry to bother you," to the lecturer. Oh well. Apparently he bet with his friends to do this for 3 troughs of strong beer. Alright, I'm going to tell the listeners what I told the university board. I was peer pressured and I was the victim. Go into the bathroom and open the door. The professor is there, pooping. We make eye contact and I freeze. He slowly reaches for handle to close the door, so naturally I shake his hand because I'm the world's biggest dum-dum. Not a student anymore, but we had a supply English teacher that had the good old habit of liking a little drink in the classroom. He used to pull a small bottle of vodka out of the drawer and take a small sip every few minutes while trying to be sly about it. Well, after a while, one of the students told a teacher about it, and then the supply teacher was found on his lunch break, watching Netflix and drinking a glass of wine in the classroom. Funny thing is, he stayed on as a teacher for another 3 months before being totally kicked out for a similar thing. 9th grade, for reference. Everyone was being super loud, so we were pretty much unable to discern anything short of our own table. Just as the teacher is coming in and everyone is quieting down, this one kid just loudly talking and telling this one girl, who looks really effing uncomfortable, "It's 4 inches," with the most proud voice ever. "Some of the guys in my school were bullcrapping loudly before class, and one of them said pretty loudly, 'Yeah, mine's huge, effing gigantic, like 6 inches of man meat.' The guy he was talking to just kind of gave him a funny look and one said, 'Dude, 6 inches is like average.' Saw a kid die on the inside that day. You know it's bad when you exaggerate, and your exaggeration isn't really impressive." I took business English my senior year of high school. We had to do a presentation on a made-up business. 2 kids did a presentation on a frozen yogurt place that was like, make your own yogurt thing. You would squeeze the flavors and stuff out of fake cow udders. Straight from the teat was the name of the business. It was a long day. "Gentlemen, I'm interested in franchising." Freshman year of college, I had one professor who would randomly call on students in class, and if they didn't answer correctly, he would proceed to give them a roast in front of the whole class for their lack of knowledge on the subject material. I was in the class with a few of my good friends, as it was a prerequisite that we all needed to have. Even though we got our fair share of roasting from him as well, we all thought it was funny, and knew it was his way of making sure the students are engaged in the lecture. About halfway through the semester, he called on one person, and after she incorrectly answered, he started to casually roast this student. At this point, another girl raised her hand to get the professor's attention. After he called on her, she proceeded to vocally berate him about how he was treating us all like children, as well as call him every vulgar word she could think of. At this point, he's shouting back at her too, complete with all the same vulgarities that she used on him, and me and my friends are just sitting in the back, laughing under our breath while simultaneously being completely dumbfounded that this kind of stuff actually happens in college. Finally, he yells at her to leave lecture. She obliges, and as soon as she is out of the room, he proceeds to roast her even more to the class. It was so odd to see something like this, especially since I had just come from high school a few months before. Man, college is wild. Ex-student here. This was a long time ago. We sent whispers around the classroom to all drop our books on the ground, pretending it was by accident when the clock on the wall hit an exact time. When it happened, our teacher was in the middle of writing on the chalkboard, and she turned around, shocked, to find us all picking up our books. She cried after that, and we all started to feel really bad. Learned later that she had just had a miscarriage and was just trying to get through her day and not think about it. We broke through that face she was putting on by accident. Sorry, Teach. We didn't know you, and we all liked you. I'm sorry for the emotional whiplash there, folks, but since I found this story, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it while writing this particular episode. So there it is. I went to a small college and our classroom sizes were very small, 15 to 25 people, so we got to know everyone pretty well. There was this one guy who came in so high that he fell off his chair. Thankfully, the professor was relatively chill, so she let him go home. Not my story, but my friend told me how on the first day of class, during introductions and icebreakers, this girl got up and ran toward the door. She didn't make it and threw up all over the place, looked around her, and completely horrified, left the class. She came back for her stuff later. I have the same reaction to icebreakers. Tell us one fun fact about yourself. Also, another time, my professor knew I was turning 21 the night before, and when I came in the next morning, completely hungover and dead, he and the whole class applauded me. It was nice. Back in 8th grade middle school, we had this really cool and chill US history teacher. He never raised his voice and was pretty laid back about class and work. He taught in a storytelling kind of manner, and I don't even remember annotating any document in his class. Well, we had that one kid. In this story, I'm going to call him Jim. Jim was always late to class and never turned stuff in. He was that one really cringy kid that everyone either hated or pitied. My teacher never really got fed up with him and would always show his distaste for him in his facial expressions. My teacher normally would pull him aside to talk to him about his tardiness or missing assignments. Jim would say he would be earlier/do the assignments, but he never did. One day, Jim walks in late again. My teacher is about to start teaching, and then he turns and sees Jim walking in. Well, this time, my teacher wasn't so happy about it. It was the middle of the school year toward the end, and my teacher must have gotten so fed up with Jim at that point. My teacher yells Jim's name at the top of his lungs. He normally had a boomy voice, but when he yelled, it amplified 100 times over. The ground literally shook when he yelled, and I'm sure they could hear him downstairs at the other end of the school. Our school wasn't that small either. For the rest of the class period, about 30 minutes, literally it was dead silent. Everyone was still kind of shocked from it. Someone asked, "Meth, can I cook it?" in chemistry. Another person asked our math teacher who was going home to Canada over break if she could threaten to kill his mum who lives there. Same person told the same teacher that he couldn't do the work because he has 100 extra chromosomes. He doesn't. She responded by saying, "That explains why you look like that." As somebody who seems to just have a really strong idiot magnet located within their person, I sympathize heavily with these teachers and their rotating clown show of students. I remember being maybe in 2nd grade and this one kid in our class kept yelling trash through the window at some 10th to 11th grader that was standing outside our windows. Our window was easy to climb in and out as it wasn't placed at a high level from the ground. Dude that was standing outside got annoyed with him, I guess, and just jumped on the windowsill, which was pretty wide, and said something along the lines of, "You kids should not be saying things like this. I'm older and won't do anything, but someone in this life will at some point if you keep this behavior." Then went back to his friends or whatever like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Our whole class of 2nd graders was shocked. I know it would have been more interesting if I remembered the details, but it happened a long time ago. Okay, so this happened a while ago, so I might not have all the details. So I was on the school bus and we weren't allowed to eat on the bus. So the kids behind me were talking about lunch tomorrow and one of them said, "Yeah, I can bring bacon." I was hungry, so I said, "Bacon? Who's bringing bacon?" The bus driver overheard me, but didn't know it was me, stopped the bus and yelled, "Bacon? Who has bacon?" Then he walked down the aisle and looked to see who had the bacon. It was so funny, but you kind of had to be there. First day of school, freshman year in woodshop. Teacher just finishes showing us a safety video on proper use of how to use a table saw. Then he was about to give a demonstration and said, "Now, you're going to see me do things a little differently than how you just saw it being done in the video you just watched. But that's just because I'm a professional, and I have been doing this for over 30 years. Teacher then proceeded to immediately cut off 3 of his fingers with the saw at the front of the classroom. Blood was spraying everywhere. He was screaming, holding his hand. Guys I was with in the back of the class started laughing, thinking it was a prank. Girl in the front of the class projectile vomited. A few of us helped him and his fingers on the floor, and went and got the nurse. Someone called an ambulance. They were able to reattach them at the hospital. Wood class was cancelled for the rest of the year, and we all took some home economics in its place. This was an amazing Reads username, totally made up story? Damn it! When I was in college, I was sitting in a geology lecture center when someone dressed in a banana costume crashes in, does a lap around the room, then gets chased out of the room by a guy in a gorilla suit who came in after him. Was in a math class when a random student fell into the classroom and simply yelled, "You pushed me too hard, shifthead." He got up and left as if nothing really happened. The class laughed their butts off, including my math teacher. That's something I only see in cartoons. In high school, this big-sized metalhead was always late for the first class period of the day because he was hanging out in the hallway with his girlfriend for too long and never gave himself enough time to walk to the classroom. My teacher was a real laid-back kind of guy and had a flowing sort of teaching style. He really didn't mind, but one day he got annoyed because he knew the reason. He told the dude that he could say goodbye to his girlfriend a few minutes earlier and get to class on time. There was a little back and forth as this metalhead attempted to bluff and lie his way into some type of excuse. The teacher wasn't having it and said that he had to come to class on time once. He said, "You have to do it once. If you don't get to this class on time tomorrow, you're going to have to stay after school for detention. There was back and forth as this metalhead attempted to determine the seriousness of this threat. It seemed pretty serious. The teacher said he'd make the kid help clean the classroom. The next morning, we're all in there, the bell rings, and the teacher opens his mouth to speak. Suddenly from the hallway is the thunderous sound of someone wearing heavy boots running down it toward the room. Accompanying this is a deep-throated scream. No! The teacher looks at the class in shock as the door flies open and there is one last thunderous clap from a boot being stomped as the metalhead enters the room. Out of breath, this kid casually walks to his seat and says in his deep raspy voice, "I don't know what they're screaming about out there." I doubt that anyone else in the school could have yelled like that. There was a guy who sat in the front row of one of my classes when I was in community college. He would just bring fresh vegetables and just eat like a squash and cauliflower raw during class. Oh, persistent loud lecture eaters, how I haven't missed you, or the universal strong body odors your community of public munchers seems to share. Two girls in a fight. One of them German suplexed the other into a table. I know that sounds like wrestling, but my teacher in 8th grade had an old wooden table next to her desk to hold extra books and stuff. Girls fought over a dude, I think, and after the slapping and hair pulling, it happened. This is in a college lecture hall, but with not too many students. During class, we heard female moans. At first, we each thought that they were hearing things, so nobody responded. 5 minutes later, the moans got even louder, and we turned around to the source. We thought it was probably someone watching an adult movie who accidentally forgot to plug their headphones in. The dude was one hand deep into the girl sitting next to him. Her short skirt was hiked up. I was sitting in my physics class trying to stay awake because that class is one of the first classes of the day, and I didn't get much sleep the night before. I sit at a table in the back of the class by myself. The table to my left has two of my friends and one other student sitting at it. I forget exactly what was being taught that day, but I remember my friends suddenly saying things like, "Oh my god, are you all right? And maybe you should go to the nurse." I looked over to see my friends grabbing tissues and giving them to the other student whose nose was bleeding, which wouldn't be such a problem if there wasn't so much blood pouring out from this guy's nose. It was concerning, to say the least. Our teacher told him to go and see the nurse. He nodded, stood up, and then heeled out of the room. It was probably the weirdest thing I have seen in a while.
Former Walmart employees of Reddit, what are your horror stories? My mom was a manager at Walmart. She told me about this woman who was trying to steal a prepaid phone. When she got caught by security, she used the knife she was attempting to open the plastic packaging with to cut the security dude after cutting herself. She then went on to scream at him that she has an infectious disease and now he's going to have it for trying to stop her. I used to do field service for Walmarts in the Portland, Oregon area. The East Portland stores were especially fun. The Wood Village, Eastport Plaza, and Happy Valley stores are relatively close together, and we techs refer to them as the Gauntlet. The Eastport Plaza store was especially active, and we nicknamed that one the Thunderdome. Every visit, we would witness an arrest or something more exciting or disgusting. Last Christmas, for instance, while Frank Sinatra's version of Mistletoe and Holly was playing, a dude was totally face-planted by some cops after resisting arrest, in the process damaging the automatic doors and knocking over a display. Another time, a tech witnessed the arrest of the hottest-looking naughty worker ever on 82nd Street, being cuffed and stuffed in the parking lot. One day, I arrived at Thunderdome and noticed that I could not get the customer service desk to check in. Several workers were not allowing people to pass, and there was also a number of orange cones marking the restricted area. A quick whiff indicated what my eyes later confirmed. Crap all over the floor. The men's room is right next to the customer service area. Eventually, they had to break out the Zamboni machine to finish cleaning up. I had about 10 registers to work on there that day. They beat the hell out of their equipment in that store, and after 2 hours, I was ready to take a leak and check out. They still weren't letting anybody into the men's room. God only knows what horrors there must have been. Working there as a cashier since October, Christmas Eve rolls around and thank God I'm not scheduled to work. Cue phone call from the manager asking why I haven't come in yet that day. I'm not on the schedule? Manager. Yes, you are. I'm not coming in. I wasn't on the schedule. Next day I worked was the day after Boxing Day went, and looked at the schedule, and lo and behold, someone wrote that I was supposed to work in pencil. I quit shortly thereafter. I had a coworker call me one morning, and when I answered the phone very sleepily, she just started crying and asked, "You didn't know you were scheduled, did you?" I hadn't been scheduled, but my boss changed the schedule after my previous day of work and didn't inform me. I couldn't get to work that morning because of my lack of transportation, and I had to hang up after a painful conversation with my sobbing coworker. I transferred not long after that since my boss let that happen a few more times. I shouldn't have to wake up at 5 in the morning to call my boss and see if I'm scheduled for the day simply because she changed the printed schedule constantly. You see, coworkers couldn't leave until coverage arrived. If you're the only trained cashier and the next person doesn't show up and no one else on the floor is cashier trained, they want you to stay until the late person shows up. But if they had already worked 8 hours and covered for 2 additional hours with their coverage not showing up, she was likely to be overworked and at her wit's end only to call and realize no one was coming and she'd have to do a double shift. I worked at Walmart about 13 years ago at one of the few stores left that closed overnight. It was a regular old Walmart, not at all super. I worked overnight stocking. I liked it. I only dealt with customers for a couple hours before the store closed and then just stocked the shelves. I mainly worked in the automotive department, and the nights would go by really fast. I worked with a bunch of people who were related to each other. There was a dad, Steve, his wife's sister, and a stepdaughter who worked there during the day in the jewelry department. Steve stocked the sporting goods department right next to mine. This guy was really gross. He would constantly pop over to my section and ask me if I needed help lifting stuff up onto the overstocked shelves, and he would make comments about how pretty I was and how if he was 10 years younger, he'd date me. Dude was pushing 50 and I was just a 19-year-old girl. I just laughed off his comments, say I didn't need help, and that I was perfectly happy with my boyfriend, thank you. One night, he decided to tell me how big his one-eyed monster was. He relayed a story, a total lie I'm sure, about how one day he was getting out of the shower and his stepdaughter, who was 17, saw him accidentally and exclaimed about how nice his one-eyed monster was and how she wanted to try it out. I was dumbfounded and I did not know what to say. I just said, "Oh, well, I gotta get back to work," and kind of shuffled away. A week later, he was caught doing the deed with his wife's sister in the bathroom at work. They were both fired, his wife quit, and his stepdaughter continued to work there. Mine isn't as bad as some of those here, but it was its own special kind of awful. I worked on third shift for a summer between college years. The Walmart I was in had about 1 hour's worth of music playing over the speakers all night, playing on a non-stop loop. My sleep habits were already pretty mucked from trying to adjust to third shift, but the music is what really did it. I heard that same music loop over and over again, all shift, 5 days a week. When I left the store, I would still hear it running in my head. Then I started hearing it in my dreams. Then it got so ingrained that I started just dreaming I was working my shift at Walmart. Several days a week, I would have the experience of working an entire 8-hour shift. Then just around quitting time, my alarm clock would go off, and I would wake up and go work an 8-hour shift. I quit a few weeks early at the end of the summer because I was losing my gosh darn mind. I sprained my back moving product in the back. At first I thought it was a pulled muscle, and I walked towards the pharmacy to try and buy a heating pad and some Tylenol. I made it to jewelry, barely keeping conscious from the pain. I asked my coworker to call management and let them know I had hurt myself pretty badly and needed to go to the hospital. Management told her to have me go back to the office to fill out paperwork. I blacked out twice going back and was yelled at for taking so long. I ended up being out for a month and a half for the injury and got a whopping $24 in workman's compensation because the second I got hurt, my hours were reduced to 1 hour a week. I hate Walmart. A friend of mine was working part-time at Walmart. He'd been there for over a year. He was working any and all shifts that they threw at him, so he could try to provide for his wife and unexpected baby. He started to apply for any and all full-time positions as they really needed the benefits. One day, management took him aside and told him this was not the Walmart way, and he needed to make a plan with steps on how to get a particular position. Apparently, anything full-time is not okay. Walmart wants to help you achieve your specific goals, but really Walmart wants to use you as much as they can and break your spirit. Once I had a woman who was giving me a hard time about a coupon that was expired. Coupon people are the worst. She refused to give up. She really wanted that $1 off. My line was getting really long and I was getting really frustrated. So I reached in my pocket and pulled out a $5 and said, "If I give you a $5, will you give up on this coupon?" She got angry and said, "I can't believe you said that to me." She told the CSM, but I didn't get in trouble for it. The amount of times that people ask me why we don't take coupons after they expire is ridiculous. They have a freaking date on them for a reason. I'll start with my grossest. A woman comes in with some underwear and said they didn't fit, and she wanted to return them for cash because she had already bought the correct size elsewhere. She had a receipt and plopped a Walmart bag down on the counter. Inside this bag were 6 crusty, crap-stained underwear that were a biohazard from 6 feet away. Needless to say, I did not touch them. I paged the manager on duty and he tells me to just take them back, despite being very gross. Processed the return and she happily left the store with her $8. Former cart pusher. Had an old lady try to tip me $1 after I helped her bring her newly bought plants or some crap to her car. Told her I couldn't accept it per company policy, and it was only $1, so it wasn't particularly enticing. She then proceeded to roll over in her little scooter mobile and stuff it down the front of my pants. She chuckled dirtily as she rolled away. Yo, Granny is making it rain over here. Look at all those pennies, just tossing pennies at all of those cart pushers. I love going to Walmart. I get to see all the chunky hunkies. Here, pennies for everyone. I worked for Mallwart 11 years ago for a whopping total of 8 months. I worked the overnight shift as an overnight stalker for Department 8, Pets. The store I worked at had just gotten brand new high-rise shelves installed. They were said to be able to hold over a ton. Well, one night after getting all my regular freight stocked and overstock put into the bins, my bosses had me pull 8 pallets of Arm & Hammer cat litter. The boxes had a bonus 10 pounds inside, making them nearly 35 or so pounds apiece. They wanted all of those on the high risers. I asked if they were absolutely sure the shelves would be able to handle all that weight. I threw a crap fit about it because I know I was in the right for being worried. Other department managers who were there also sided with me. They watched me over the next couple of hours as I carefully did my job. As I was putting the final 12 boxes on the bottom shelf, I heard a cracking and tearing sound. And the next thing I know is I'm buried underneath all of the cat litter that had caused the shelves to collapse. Everybody in the store heard it happen, and everybody was explicitly told not to dial 911 or anything. Muck that crap! After getting all my blood cleaned from my face and cuts patched up, I called my uncles, then my girlfriend, who was a lawyer, told her what had just occurred and what the upper management is attempting to do. As of today, I still haven't spent all the money I received as a result of going to court over it. Muck Walmart! I was a department manager in frozen foods. One day, on one of my days off, so I didn't witness this, one of my employees came into work seeming very confused and disoriented. She couldn't remember the date, what day it was. Someone asked her what her name is. She couldn't remember. She clearly had what some would call a very minor case of serious brain damage. The store refused to call 911 and instead called for her mother to pick her up and take her to the hospital. Apparently, something that not everyone appears to be aware of is that if you ask someone, "What is your name?" and they respond, "I don't know," then you need to call for an ambulance. This woman had a blood vessel in her brain that popped. Her head partially exploded. It could have terminated her. And those cheap plastards at Walmart wouldn't call 911. There was also someone in produce who had a heart attack. The store didn't call 911 for him either. One of the other produce associates had to volunteer to take him to the hospital. Walmart is the only place I've ever worked at where I could say they wouldn't care if I passed on right there in the store. And it wouldn't be hyperbole. Muck Walmart. Wow, there definitely is a theme here. That's 2 stories now of people nearly just getting terminated in the store. Is there a rule or something that you just can't call 911? That's insane. Why would they do this? What's wrong with you, Walmart? I was working at Walmart at the beginning of this year. Aside from weird older men hitting on me, it wasn't that bad. A few weeks before the minimum pay was raised, they decided I needed a new position in the store. I was told that I was great with people and need to be out helping customers as opposed to checking. Sales associates get paid less than cashiers. They told me that since it was basically a promotion for me, that they would let me keep the cashier pay instead of lowering me to sales pay. I agreed to the job for that reason, plus new job was full-time. A week later, they take me to sign the papers for the job switch, and the manager gets to the pay part. He says, "I know we told you that we could keep the same pay, but it's just easier to make it the same as everyone else's. Besides, everyone's pay is going up in a few weeks anyway." So I just agreed, whatever, still going to be making more. Then my hours start getting cut. I agreed to 40 hours. I was cut down to 25. My manager said he messed up the schedule on accident and would fix it. It continued happening every week. I finally got so frustrated I just left one day and never came back. 4 hours into my first shift, I was facing items on a bottom shelf while a coworker was facing items on the top shelf. She dropped a gallon of Gatorade on my head. Management refused to let me report the injury or leave to seek medical attention. I finished the shift, dazed and in pain. The next day, I found out my skull was broken. Officially, since I was not allowed to report the injury, it didn't happen at work. I rage quit. This happened before I got hired, but I heard enough about it from coworkers. An elderly couple would come in once a week to go shopping. The old man had trouble walking, so he would kiss his wife and go sit in the fitting room area until she was done. One day, they came in and did the little kiss, and he also handed her his wedding ring, like he knew something was about to happen. A couple minutes of sitting there after his wife walked off, the guy collapsed to the floor, and the fitting room ladies called 911. One of the department managers of the time was also a paramedic, so he rushed over. The old guy started to cough up blood, and every available associate had to come and make a wall of people so customers don't see what is going on. All these associates saw and heard the guy choking on his own blood, now coming out of his nose and ears, passing on the floor. They were trying to find his wife, and no one could find her, and the associates had to wait a half an hour for the coroner to get down there and take the body. The associates who saw it still have flashbacks about it. One day, a woman stole a bottle of perfume and took it to the bathroom. She poured it out into her own container and then proceeded to fill the container with her own urine. She then took the bottle up to the returns and tried to return it. To this day, I have no idea why my manager gave her the refund. It was very obvious that the woman urinated in the bottle because it was still warm. A woman steals perfume, returns her own urine, and profits from Walmart. You know, it takes a type of crazy to actually be prepared to do stuff like that. Is that in her agenda? Is that in her calendar, Yes, today is going to be a wonderful day as I'm just going to steal some delectable perfume from Walmart and then just return it for an extra few bucks with my equally as valuable urine. That's a whole nother level of crazy. I warn you, and I warn myself, we are never going to go to Walmart late at night. Just no. Someone left a baby in a stroller just chilling in one of the aisles one night. I was a cashier at the time, so I don't know all of the details, but from what I know, authorities got involved and the guy came back after what we think was at least an hour or two, appearing oblivious to what he did wrong. I don't think he spoke much English, so it was just a confusing situation all around. Thank God for the guy stalking who was looking out. We're lucky it didn't get any worse knowing how crazy people who come through can be, let alone at night. What's weird was this wasn't even brought up again with my coworkers, so I don't recall what ended up happening to the guy. It was just another stupid thing we witnessed. The whole don't call 911 thing was standard also at Target. I worked in the deli and our gloves to clean the slicer went missing one day. They are reinforced to help in case your finger makes contact with the blade, so the blade won't slice through your finger. Well, I told my manager we needed gloves and kept reminding her every day I worked, but she would just reply with, "I've let the e-tail know." One day I'm cleaning the slicer, it's taken apart so it can't open any wider than the locked and closed position, but there's an open spot at the top where the sharpener goes. Anyway, I'm cleaning it and my finger catches the blade right on the tip and it gets cut off. I felt a sting, thought it was minor, and went to the sink. I take off my latex gloves and start rinsing and I see my fingertip is gone, just flat and pouring blood. So I wrapped it in my pure white deli coat and walk out to the deli in the front. I showed the leader on deck for the night and she freaks out, pulls me into the break room and then has somebody take me to the hospital. Some people suggested she call an ambulance after about 20 minutes of me standing at the sink bleeding. Then she pulled in a guy who was shopping that was a part-time firefighter, and he took one look and said, "I should have been at the hospital 30 minutes ago." Crazy. This guy comes in on a busy day, and I start ringing him up for all kinds of stuff from around the store, including the newly released PS2 and GameCube. Yeah, I worked there a lifetime ago. He writes a check and I proceed to process it in our little machine. It comes back with a suspicious error, so I tell him the machine is acting weird, and outside of earshot, I call a manager over. He starts getting visibly nervous as a few CSMs, cashier managers, come over and inspect the check. They ask him a few questions and take the check and disappear, stating they need to run it on a different register and that there's nothing to worry about and they'll be right back. After a few minutes, he is sweating bullets and eventually starts slowly making his way out of electronics. His pace quickens until he's full on running for the door. I watch him from the register cause frick it, I'm not breaking a sweat for minimum wage, and bam! Our huge security guy tackles him to the ground, picks him up, and escorts him up front. At this point, I tell a coworker to take over the register, and I head up front to see what else happens. I just had a feeling. I get there to see the guy meet up with the CSMs that took the check, a handful of managers, and a few police. They present the check to him, ask where he got it, and before anyone can react, he lunges forward, grabs the check, and eats it. Dude ate the check. They wrestle with the guy a little and bring him into the back room. Customers and staff alike were staring in disbelief at what had just occurred. I found out later that the guy was traveling from Walmart to Walmart across state borders, passing bogus checks. So, yeah, normal stuff.
What's the smallest amount of power you've seen someone abuse? Worked for a small computer repair company, 4 people total. The boss, 2 grease monkeys, we did all the small stuff like reformats and virus removal, and the secretary. It was awesome. I loved that job. The boss and my coworker were super chill and helpful. But the secretary, we'll call her Lorelei, was a different story. When I started working, I got a text from an old friend of mine warning me about her. Apparently, I had been hired because he had just been fired because of her. Okay, I thought, but she was great. Very helpful and nice. She'd bring us Starbucks once in a while and other little niceties. Maybe my old friend had been the problem. Anyway, life was great. The months passed and things started to change. The nice secretary came out one day and told us she was no longer a secretary, but the office manager, and berated us any time we didn't call her the office manager. It was strange, but whatever. A little while later, I got called into the boss's office where she is standing right next to him, like Iago perched on Jafar's shoulder. She tells me my work priorities have been shifted. I was no longer allowed to work on any computer that came into the shop or go out on service calls. Instead, she said, I was to monitor and report on our customers' server activity. Okay, I guess this must be important. For the next week, I'm confined to my desk and printed out small batches of computer jargon that made very little sense and took less than an hour to do. When I asked what else I should do, she would intervene before my boss responded and tell me to try and improve the reports, whatever that meant. The next Monday, she calls me into the office again and says I'm on work probation. I have 3 weeks to be more productive or I'll be fired. Apparently, I wasn't doing enough to earn a paycheck. I did my best to make the reports as readable as possible, and when no one was looking, I'd finish up clients' computers that were on the workbench. Simple stuff like clicking next after a virus scan, until she caught me and reprimanded me for half an hour about how I don't have permission to do anything outside my job description. I gave up, sad to admit. I could see the writing on the wall. I spent the last week goofing off on my computer until the next Monday. I get called into the office. There's the boss I once respected, sitting like a beaten dog, and Lorelei, sitting like a queen in her place. She tells me I haven't improved my performance, and they're sorry, but here's my last check. Goodbye. I turn to my boss and look him square in the eye and ask him if he really agreed with it. He slumps his shoulders and said, kinda. I went home and texted that old friend asking him what happened when he got fired. He told me pretty much the same story I just went through. Later on, I hear they hired some other kid to take my place. Same thing ends up happening to him. Jeez. Sorry for the novel, I don't talk about this very much. I guess it feels good to let it out. As a closer, she eventually got fired after trying to get rid of the best tech guy they had. My co-worker/superior. I think my old boss finally grew a spine. She ended up leaving her husband and 2 daughters for another woman who eventually left her. No idea where she is now. Don't care. Maybe it's just me, but when someone in a non-military setting insists that I call them by their job title, it immediately makes it 10 times harder to take them seriously. I had a co-worker who cheated when she played games with 3-year-olds. When the kids called her out on it, she would deny it and say that she was a teacher and whatever she did was allowed in the game. Her entire self-esteem seemed to be dependent on winning games designed for preschoolers. When people used to quit at my old company, I'd let them click the mouse button to deactivate their AD account on the last day. Everyone loved it because it was a single act that meant closure. A teacher in high school tried to send me to the office for having an electronic device out in the hallway. The device was medical equipment, and after I explained that to him, he told me he didn't care because I'd still broken a school rule. Needless to say, I didn't get in trouble. For a bit of context, this all took place before school even started, and there were plenty of kids waiting in the halls for class to start. I'm diabetic, so I was using my insulin pump when this teacher walked past. I didn't end up going to the office because my awesome broadcasting teacher heard the other teacher shouting in the hallway and came out to see what was going on. I did a lot of work for my broadcasting teacher before and after school, so he knew me pretty well. He didn't even wait to find out what was going on before he told the guy to stop shouting and leave me alone. And since the butthole teacher only picked on students, he left without another word, no repercussions. I worked at a small retail store with a manager, an assistant manager, and me, the employee. The manager loved me. The assistant manager loved me some days and hated me others. One day, when the assistant manager was in a particularly hateful mood, she threatened to recommend the manager that I be fired. I said, "Why? The manager loves me and I'm a good, reliable worker. She would never fire me." And she said, "Yeah, I know she wouldn't, but as assistant manager, I have the power to recommend you get fired." My high school did an end-of-year celebration on campus during school time. It was just the graduating year and the year below us, so it wasn't that disruptive. But to prevent it getting out of control, the school hired 4 security guards. One of them decided to lock all gates at the end of the day. We couldn't leave unless we exited through the office. I'd say there were around 700 students, and he just refused to let us leave, until another security guard had to fight through the crowd to let him know he was just being a jerk. He unlocked the gate I was at, and then unlocked the others. When I did safety patrol in elementary school, we gave out "good job" tickets to younger kids if they made good choices in the hallway. My best friend from my neighborhood was a grade below me, so every day I would give him a good job card so his mum would let him come outside and play. He's the only person I ever gave good job cards to. My kids were quite little, and I was giving them turns each day of being in charge of cleaning the living room to exercise leadership skills. When it was my son's turn, I had left them alone for a while and came back to the girls complaining that he was ordering them to punch each other. In elementary school, I had this one teacher who, when she would have to leave the classroom, she'd pick a random kid to stand at the chalkboard and watch the class. No one was allowed to talk or get up until the teacher came back. To be honest, my class was pretty rowdy, and given the chance, we could get really loud, which is why the teacher didn't want us talking if she was gone. If you talked or got up, your name went on the board and you'd lose 5 minutes of recess. Then, tally marks would be added if you talked or got up again, and you'd lose an additional 5 minutes. And if you got enough, you'd start losing time on the next day's recess. One day, she picked this one kid. We'll call him Cole. Cole gets up there and he's slowly looking back and forth between each of us, and if he thought someone was going to talk, he'd put their name on the board. They didn't have to do anything, and he'd put their name on the board and cost them 5 minutes of recess. He then offered those with their names on the board that he'd take their names off before the teacher got back if they held their breath until he said they could breathe. Oh boy, in my freshman year of college, we had a group project, and of course we have someone who decides to elect themselves as a leader. Okay, cool, no issues. You don't know how to code, but we can teach you. But he didn't want to. He wanted to delegate and then sit on his butt. So the three of us coded this flight management program while he organized meetings and set deadlines for us. He raged when we didn't finish said tasks within the time limit and went off on ridiculous rants. The kicker was that we had to include our names as comments on which part of the code we did and got graded on that. We continuously bugged him to learn just a bit to at least create the front interface or the help section, but he straight up refused. Since he didn't write a single piece of code, he ended up getting a 0 in the project. He started blaming us for not putting his name on the code and went and complained to the professor. The professor laughed in his face after he heard our story. This was a CS class. I feel like everyone has met this person in university at some point, no matter their field of study. I think most of them end up in middle management later in life. When I was first starting my job, there was this prick who worked in the office who told me he was a supervisor. He would order me around and give me extra work on top of the work I'm trying to do, and give me crap later for not having it all done. He'd make me do unsafe stuff and work in areas I hadn't been officially trained in. Someone let it slip that he's just an office clerk and not a supervisor, so the next time he walked up to give me extra work, I told him to get a real supervisor to okay it, and he paused, looked at me, took the paperwork back, and went back to the office. Didn't see him for the rest of that day. In my AP government class in high school, we had a 2-week mock congress, and they each had to propose a bill to our mock subcommittee. I was named chairman of the subcommittee. One of the leaders of the Republicans, Danny, shared the same first period with me. Our first period was really strict about being late, but if someone in the class said that you showed up and went to the bathroom, she would not mark you late. So the first thing I did was make an alliance with Danny. He covered for my lateness and I pushed his bill through the subcommittee. And we learned about real politics. Political corruption really is the gift that keeps on giving. I used to volunteer at the local library when I was in high school. Every year they had a book sale to help raise money for events. 25 cents for paperbacks and 50 cents for hardbacks. I was also working retail at this time, so I decided being cashier would be pretty appropriate. It was going pretty well. I kept the line moving and was used to the small talk of being at a register. The head librarian was busy organizing and she had one of the mum volunteers keep an eye on things. Not long after she started supervising, she came over to me and told me she didn't think it was a good idea for me to be on register. I was pretty confused by this. No one had complained, there was hardly ever a wait, there was no reason for her to think I wasn't capable. I told her it was fine, that I was used to this with my part-time job. She was still visibly uneasy and insisted I help with something else. It got to the point where she was practically demanding me to go somewhere else. Not wanting to cause a scene, I went to assist elsewhere. I found out later she thought the math of calculating the totals was too hard for children to be responsible for. Seriously, I was in AP Calc and she didn't think that I could add 25 cents and 50 cents increments. The best part of it all was that my mum went to the book sale a few years after and the same lady was on the register. She had a cheat sheet for adding up the book totals. I'm still bitter. For those wondering about the cheat sheet, it was a list of the 25-cent increments like this. 1 book, 25 cents, 2 books, 50 cents, 3 books, 75 cents, etc., etc. I had a babysitter lay out a bunch of rules, including words we couldn't say. Not bad words, mind you, but shoe was one of them, and I specifically remember being sent to my room without dinner for saying it. My brother ended up busting me out, and we locked her out of the house. Viva la révolution! I'm a receptionist at a very quiet office. To get in, visitors have to push a button that makes a loud sound inside the office. Then I see them on camera and unlock the door remotely. This girl comes every day, early in the morning, to check if there's anything to pick up. She works upstairs. She just pops her head in to see the empty box and leaves. But before this, she holds down the effing button, and the sound is horribly loud, jarring, and elongated unnecessarily. So I just sit here and stare at her on the camera for way longer than I need before buzzing her in. I'm a petty B-word. I don't think you're that much of a B-word. I think I would try playing a game with this person. I would not open the door for longer and longer increments and wait until she was just about to push the buzzer again and then open the door. Hold her up for the maximum amount of time possible every day. Maybe I'm a petty B-word too. A friend of my mum babysat us once. Major control freak. I tried to play with a small box of Legos in the living room, and she told me to clean it up because someone might step on them. So I pack up and go into my room and start playing. She yells at me from the living room that she can't see me, so I can't even be in my own freaking room. She's been sitting on her big butt the whole day, eating our Oreos and potato chips, so I say screw it and dump the box in the middle of the hallway and start building. She flips her lid and screams at me to pick them up. I tell her no. She calls my mum and yells that I'm being very rebellious and she needs to get home and rein in her horrible little son. I hate Sue. In elementary school, everyone had the chance to be a line leader on his or her birthday. One kid was kind of socially awkward, so on her day she decided to give someone else the title. Our teacher was pissed off because she felt disrespected by this mild change in line leadership. If you don't want to accept the title I generously gave to you, go to Mrs. P's classroom. I'm trying to be kind to you, but you're being a brat who thinks she has the right to decide who's in charge. Then she went off on the other girl for indecent behavior and harassment, even though she just kind of yelled at the awkward chick, but whatever. Maybe the birthday girl shouldn't have called someone else the line leader, but the teacher took personal offense for something so trivial. Worked at the concession stands at the beach one summer. Whenever responsibilities were given out of who was supposed to do what for that day, one of my co-workers would suck up to the supervisors, so they would give him the clipboard for him to decide who did what. Naturally, he never assigned himself anything. After handing out the jobs, he'd go and sit in the little office inside the stand and do nothing, while the rest of us worked. One time he assigned me the job of cleaning the boardwalk. I was to take a broom and dustpan and walk the entire length of the boardwalk looking for litter to sweep up. The idiot didn't know that the cleaning of the boardwalk wasn't the responsibility of us concession stand workers. That job belonged to the workers employed by the state. We concession stand workers were responsible for the cleanliness of only the small cement patio area directly in front of our stand, not the boardwalk too. I took advantage of his stupidity and I walked down the boardwalk long enough to be out of sight of my concession stand and sat down on a bench for a couple of hours or so, resting and relaxing while he was doing the same in the office. When working fast food, I was told to scrub the bathroom floors. It was already really clean, so it didn't take long. I went back up front, and before I could say anything, my supervisor sent me back to do a better job. Went back, locked the doors, and played on my phone for over half an hour. Later, I was told that the bathroom looked really great. Easiest hour of my time while working there. I was at a completely empty airport and only needed to identify myself before I could pick up my luggage. There was no queue, so I skipped the line. That butthole at the desk made me walk back and compelled me to zigzag all around the fences where nobody was standing. And afterwards, he and a colleague laughed at me because he knew he could use his power like that. At first, we obviously didn't go back because it was bullcrap. However, he refused to help us then, so we rolled our eyes and did it anyway, just to get it over with instead of making a fuss. It was a small foreign airport and authorities would not give a crap about complaining tourists. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the closest that small, petty airport attendant ever came to feeling joy. Anybody who is involved in running a homeowners association. Back when I lived with my parents, there was a woman on the HOA that lived across the street from us.
Both houses were on the corner. She decided that there was too much traffic on the street in front of her house in the morning, so she decided to put up an official-looking sign stating that no one could turn right at the stop sign in front of her house from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. Mind you, people were turning right at that corner because there was an elementary school located on the street behind her house, and many people needed to drive there. But she didn't care, it was disrupting her, and she wasn't going to allow it. However, I also needed to turn there to get out of the neighborhood for work, so one night, a few days after she put up the sign, I stole it. She put it up again. I stole it again. She responded by selling her house. Justice was served. I have a good friend who is on the board of his association. He is also a trained mediator and a really good guy. The board is only 3 people, basically because no one else wants to put up with anyone else complaining. This position wears on him so bad. I don't think he has actually ever delivered a written delivery, which would be a violation or order, but simply talks to people. "Oh, your yard isn't mowed because your wife has been in the hospital. No problem, get it done when you can," type of guy. His stress comes from the neighbors complaining and tattling on the people next door over the smallest stuff. I honestly feel bad for him many days. My dad actually got elected to the head of an HOA because he wanted to chill it out a bit. He would get really long letters from the previous HOA head, and they were just massive rants about how he needed to buckle down on these people that had next to nothing wrong with their yards, fences, or whatever tiny BS this guy deemed unacceptable. My dad just told him TS and to stop complaining about every little thing. It was me. I was working at the tax office. Someone called up. Their return was late, so they had a $100 fine. He also owed some tax. Not a lot, but enough. So he calls up and he's telling me about how he hadn't been working this year and things were tight, and I'm sat there filling in a form to put him on a payment plan. And then I realized this was a kid from school that had bullied me. So I told him it was TS and he had 30 days to pay before he added another fine. Then I closed the form and ended the call. Wanted to relocate with my cool little rabbit. Brought a ticket and confirmed with the airline beforehand. Ticket had a comment that said, "Authorized to travel with a rabbit in the cargo hold. Paid extra." On the day of my flight, after security checks, some lady who's the chief service officer, which basically was a 50-year-old flight attendant, said we're not flying. The rabbit will escape and chew electrical wiring and kill us all, apparently. Also, she had no superior and reported to no one. It took a lot of tears from my SO, lots of shouting from me, and 1 hour to get her to get special approval from the captain. I don't think I could ever take the little guy back now, stuck in Germany for a few more years. That lady made the day of starting a new life extremely traumatic. Frick you, Hannah, wherever you are. Security guard at a community college. This guy was the definition of a rent-a-cop. Big, fat, awkward, no gun, and a whistle that he was not the least bit shy about using. A girl I was hanging out with needed to go up there to turn in a form, and I went with her. We got there, and the parking lot was deserted. That's when we realized it was a holiday weekend, but since we had already driven up there, we went to see if the offices were open. Sure enough, the door to the administration building is unlocked, so we go in. After walking around for a bit, we realize that all the offices are closed, so we decide to cut our losses and head out. Suddenly, from the other end of the hall, we hear, "Freeze! Stop what you're doing right now!" It's the tub of crap security guard who comes down and starts screaming at us like a drill sergeant, demanding answers for why we're in the building, accusing us of breaking in and not letting us get a word in. Finally, I just cut him off and said, "Dude, we're enrolled students and the flipping door was unlocked. If you honestly think we're here to rob the place, call the real cops, but we're already on our way out." He then yelled a couple of things about this being our only warning, etc., as we walked away from him and left.
Ugly dudes with hot wives. How did you do it? By being hot when I was younger. I've aged horribly while my wife has aged like fine wine. I feel you. My last 3 years, I've aged like 10 years. I've avoided aging for so long. My wife keeps getting prettier. Men also don't do the daily upkeep that most straight women do. That could account for it. I laughed at that last comment because it seems like that person thinks that gay women don't have a skin routine. Hell, I've seen gay men with better skin than some women. Smoke and mirrors. She thinks I'm hot, but it's all confidence and superficial charm. It's been 21 years and I've been white-knuckling this whole relationship hoping she doesn't notice that I'm a fat dork. I stalked your profile. You're a pretty handsome dude. Nice beard, man. You and your wife look great together. Thanks, she's got a banging body and puts her right out of my league, but she won't let me post those pics as proof. I think Pete Davidson has shown everyone that looks don't matter when it comes to getting women. And that's not me talking crap. He has a joke about it. I believe my wife is damn near blind. Wow, this has actually never really occurred to me, but my best relationship I ever had was with a gal who was just shy of being legally blind. I've never really thought about it much. Pretty much been single ever since. Time for you to start hanging out in the Braille section of the library, my dude. My wife has no depth perception and has pretty bad eyesight. The only logical reason is because she can't see me. Now get out of my swamp. In your pictures, I see someone with a lively face and laughing eyes. You look kind enough and your comment tells me you're very humorous. The picture you chose of her and your comment both tell me that you're caring and appreciative towards her. I think you all overestimate the importance of socially accepted good looks. I admit that being actively ugly might be a hindrance, but otherwise it's not really that important. As they say, good looks get you in the door, personality makes them stay and happy. I like to think of it like this. Good looks matter for a lot of hookups, but for actual relationships, personality is far more important. Six-pack abs don't matter as much as good communication skills, the ability to stay calm under pressure, and the willingness to compromise with your partner. I wholeheartedly agree with that last comment. Good-looking people destroy when it comes to the dating scene, but ask them how many good or healthy relationships they've had. If you need more evidence, just look at Hollywood relationships. My wife has terrible taste. If I'm being honest, my wife's gotten hotter over the last 25 years, and I've gotten old. I think her secret is a great skincare routine, exercise, and good genes. I was in high school when that whole Wear Sunscreen song came out in the late 90s. I took that song to heart, wore it every day, and I'm now in my 40s. I'm glad I did. I make her laugh and give great hugs. Great hugs are such an underrated skill. I have a girthy, and I mean massively good sense of humor. Just reading that made me wet, because I snorted while drinking. I blew a load of my coffee all over the table. These comments were small, but they got the job done. My wife told me I have a great sense of humor and can always brighten her day with it. She also said that I really listen to her when we talk. I definitely married up. I actually don't know. It can't be money because my job is one of the worst paying jobs in our country. It's something like 98.5% of full-time jobs make more than mine. And it can't be because of having a huge member, because mine is way below average. If I had to guess, maybe it's because I'm funny, like I think that I'm honest, like way too honest. I don't make much money and have an average PP. Quotes from a man you can trust. You pay attention to the bits other men don't typically pay attention to. My wife last week. She told me to say that I know the motion of the ocean, but as a real answer, I pay attention to the small things. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. We have good communication. I try my best to make her feel loved. I never pressure her into anything, and we encourage each other to keep improving. If we fight, we resolve it pretty quickly, because we're both able to apologize and recognize our faults. It's just about being able to say, hey, I love you and I want to talk this through because I know that we can figure it out together. We've probably had 2 or 3 big fights in our relationship, but we've always sat down and talked about it, warts and all. Spoken like a man that knows the meaning of a relationship. My friend is a short, overweight, dwarven-looking man and has a really hot girlfriend. It's all charisma. I used to run with a guy like that too. He was about 5'6" and over 200 pounds, so short and pudgy. He made okay money, but certainly wasn't rich. Yet he was always with someone you would consider to be way out of his league. How did he manage it? I figure he had 2 things going for him. 1, the guy was genuinely funny. If you're hanging around with this guy, he will keep you laughing nonstop. And 2, confidence. He'll talk to anyone, and if you shoot him down, he'll just chat up your friend without missing a beat. This kind of describes me, but also you would be surprised. There's plenty of women, like my GF, who find short, overweight, dwarven-looking men very attractive. My GF is taller than me and rubs my hairy belly in bed just like I'm a king. And she's quite hot. I like men of all heights, but my ex-husband was shorter than me and my current partner is only a little taller than me. I don't understand the need to have a large, tall man. I'm not looking for a father figure. Lots of wonderful men get overlooked because of this. There's gold in them hills out there, ladies. Part of me feels like this post was made by hobbits. Got a short, overweight, balding friend. We literally call him George Costanza. He's just confident, enthusiastic, and always doing something because he takes his hobbies seriously. His girlfriend seems the opposite, even though she's a smoke show. So it was partly a lucky find, but he also clearly adds substance to anyone's life he's in. He also comes from a very wealthy family, if you need that information. I feel like the wealthy family info is a double-edged sword because on one hand, people will automatically think, oh, she's a gold digger. But then on the other hand, it sucks for those women that are genuinely into a person and not for the money. They get overlooked. How men make us feel while we're in their presence is crucial. Sometimes by virtue of the fact that the guy showing you the attention is hot, you'll feel attractive simply because logic dictates that he could exclusively be chatting up hot women if he wants to be. So he must think you're hot. That rush of emotion wears off real quick if he's got absolutely nothing going on apart from his looks. Doubly fast if he's an arrogant jerk. As multiple people are and have always been saying, if you make us laugh and are pleasant, you're going to make us feel like the most beautiful, captivating woman in the room. That's not a high we want to come down from. Make them laugh, treat them well. Do fun stuff together, do chores, admit when you're wrong, give compliments without prompting, learn what they do and don't like. Then put that knowledge to work. Have a handle on your own psychology so you can deal with your own business. Listen twice as much as you talk. This is true. I spent an hour talking to my husband about a book I finished today. I know he wasn't completely interested, but he listened, asked questions, and was engaged. It's the sexiest thing in the world that he cares enough about me just to let me ramble and poorly explain why I love this book. I won't lie to you, when I can have a deep, thoughtful conversation with a woman, it is one of the sexiest things in the world. You know those guys who brag about finishing a pudding cup without a spoon? Well, I can clean out a peanut butter jar. No idea why he's so successful with the ladies, he says, sitting at the end of the bar licking his eyebrows. Let me tell you guys, you're gonna wanna start off like a butterfly landing on a flower and finish like a bulldog eating oatmeal. I like oatmeal. I'm not ugly, but I got a woman way hotter than me to marry me. Turns out, if you have a good personality and are slightly interesting, then you can get away with being a 5. But, the internet tells me that women only want alpha bros with muscles and money that make their bed every morning. Wait a minute. Do we really think that alpha bros make their bed every morning? Unless we think all alpha males are the American Psycho type. I'll give my perspective from the other side. My boyfriend isn't classically handsome. His hairline is receding and the man is a beanpole and somewhat effeminate. Exactly who Andrew Tate claims will never get a woman. But I'm obsessed with him and I'm so glad and proud that he's mine. Why is that? He listens when I talk. He cleans up after himself. He's funny and insightful and above all, kind. He cooks, he's terrible at it, but he tries hard. He's like the most gentle man I've ever met, and because of that, I don't feel the fear I've felt around most other men in my life. My cats love him, he feeds me, he apologizes when he's wrong, and I feel secure enough to admit when I'm wrong too. We talk out every problem as a us versus the problem instead of a me versus him. He gives me space when I need it, and attention when I need it too. We just respect each other. Those things aren't hard, but he's the first to check all those boxes. He's 100 out of 10 for me, and I'll grow old and die happily with him. I'll add on to this. My husband is more than a decade older than I am. He has a receding hairline when we met and was working 2 jobs. Our sense of humor is the same, so is our sense of justice. Our dark sides match, and he's great at housework. Then came the hookups. Oh my god, we matched there too. It was over for me. I fell in love. It's still those same qualities that make every day happy and full of laughter. You can't survive the pitfalls of life without being able to laugh. Beauty fades, hair falls out, and wrinkles form. Let's keep spreading the love for good men. My fiance is average to everyone but me. He's overweight, goofy, awkward, and kinda dumb. I say this lovingly, I'm also dumb. Think of the last 2 brain cells meme? That's us. He also makes me laugh every single day. Our childlike qualities align perfectly to keep us happy and well maintained. So we can be goofy idiots all day with each other, and it's fantastic. He embraces my mean streak that comes out playfully, to its full extent, so I can be a little brat. Every flaw I see in myself, he sees as a beauty. He also knows how to handle my mood swings and be so gentle with me on my bad days. He doesn't need to be mothered like many men, loves providing for me, as I do him, and is as sweet as candy. I can't wait to marry him. My husband has been balding since the day we met and it's never bothered me. But damn, he's funny. I made a little joke about a very shocked looking cinder block and he ran with it. We giggled in the car like school kids over a fart. We're both over 30. I have about an extra 20 to 30 pounds and he has a little bit more than that. But when he comes home and hugs me, it's all warm and safe. I've always been one of those guys where people are like, dude, how did you get her? I'm super tall, which probably helps, but I've always been overweight. I'm not exactly sloth. Look up the Goonies, youngsters, you're welcome. But I'm not Marlon Brando either. I'm highly average looking, I do pretty well financially, but you wouldn't know that if you looked at me, my truck, or home, and when I got my wife, I was broke AF. I always tell them that it isn't that hard. Treat them like people you value and respect. listen to them, take an interest in them and the things that are important to them. Put in some genuine effort and show them you care. It's easier and more effective to constantly do little things to show her how you care than always trying to prove it with some big gesture. Then just take care of yourself. Good hygiene, keep your house and ride clean, have a couple of genuine interests and hobbies. It makes you more interesting and a well-rounded person. Learn to cook. No woman wants a man-child who can't properly feed himself, and I've not met a woman yet that doesn't like a man that can cook. I personally would like to add, don't listen to douchebags. Andrew Tate is the latest one of these, but there's always some popular famous one at any given time. My husband and I met in college. What made me choose him over more conventionally attractive men who were interested in me at the time? He was extremely honest. When we talked, he listened and responded not in a way to try to get with me, but in a way you listen and respond to your best friend. And that's how I knew it was genuine. I don't know how, but I can tell when a guy is trying to prove that he's a good listener for flirty reasons versus actually connecting through the listening. This made me feel so safe and respected. I knew something was different about him. Our very first conversation was about philosophy. By the way, today we've been married for a decade now, and we absolutely laugh like kids together every single day. It sounds stupid, but Bumble. He was from the next town over. I wouldn't normally have talked to him because he didn't put anything on his profile or really fill it out. But something about him seemed kind of like, I don't know, genuine or sweet? I don't know how to explain it. He just turned out to be a bit shy, so it's hard for him to talk about himself to strangers. I'm glad I gave it a shot though. Opposite side here, ugly chick with handsome dude. I let him touch my chesticles. Works 100% of the time. My homie was a nice dude, spent 6 years third wheeling for the fun of it, but in the end glad to see he got married. He said all he did was be funny and things went over time. I feel like the waiting game advice can be bad advice for most men. It's probably better to let your feelings known instead of waiting 6 years and then possibly getting rejected. It being Valentine's Day and all, when my boyfriend and I found each other online, he would make any excuse not to video chat with me. We exchanged pics, he only had 2, but I felt it was necessary to see each other live before meeting. Pics don't show the true person. I was mainly thinking of safety and I was about to bail on him. He sweetly convinced me to be patient and wait to meet in person. I asked why. I thought he was a serial killer or something. He assured me that he wasn't. He simply didn't want my first impression of him to be on video chat. Cautiously, I decided to be patient. We proceeded to text and call each other every day for the next 2 weeks. The texts became love letters and the calls were exciting. I got to know him on a much deeper level, and I thought his voice was so sexy. He made me laugh and he was thoughtful. He was also very kind-hearted, but also very masculine, which I love. He exuded confidence. The chemistry was off the charts. The laughter was constant. When we met for the first time, it didn't matter what he looked like. He was not traditionally handsome by society standards. He was a little overweight, bald, and a bit hunched over. But I think he's gorgeous. He knew exactly what he could offer me and navigated our meeting to allow us to fall in love. Some might think that he was perhaps hiding, but we could have missed out on great love. He is the love of my life. Sometimes he jokes and asks what I see in him, and he calls himself ugly. I remind him of our love story and he smiles. I also remind him that I think he's hot AF. I plan on being his wife one day, because he's the love of my life. Well, it certainly wasn't my pee-pee size or money. Neither of those are worth bragging about. I treated her like a good friend, not an object of infatuation. That caught her attention. I got her to fall in love with me by proving to be well-rounded in my life and very capable. As Red Green would say, if the woman don't find you handsome, make sure they find you handy. Have a sense of humor, especially about yourself, and be comfortable laughing. Listen, clean the house, be kind to animals and service workers. The bar is incredibly, and I mean staggeringly, low. I'm not an ugly guy per se, but I'm stone cold average at best. I'm totally forgettable, but my wife is hot. She's actually attracting attention. She's the kind of woman that men buy things for out of the blue. I listen to her, I share chores with her, I take care of her, I encourage her to do things that make her happy. I spend time with her, and I show interest in the things that she has interest in. Wait, guys are buying things for your wife out of the blue? Yep, she was at the mall with her mother one day, and the guy in line behind her bought her food. A couple of times last year, she had guys at the water park buying her soft drinks. Once she was watching the kids at the pool on vacation, a guy bought popsicles for the kids, shot daggers at me when I walked up and sat beside her. I've long lost count of how many drinks have been bought for her at bars, even once when they realized I was there. Stuff like that. Don't get me started on how often guys come up and just chat with her. Shout out to this guy for just rolling with the punches. I know so many jerks that would get mad at their girls because they're too attractive. Complete idiots. I load the dishwasher instead of leaving my crap in the sink. She finds it hot as hell. I can lick my eyebrows. To be honest, very attractive women sometimes get less attention than you'd think, because guys think that they're just out of their league or something. So the first step to dating anyone is actually putting yourself out there and asking. Nothing's foolproof, but you'd be surprised at the results sometimes, since a lot of guys just self-reject out of being a contender because they don't think they have a shot. That's a huge piece of advice that I've gotten from some more charismatic friends. If you're interested in someone, don't reject yourself. I can honestly say I have objectively the most attractive wife out of my friend group. I was also the one who had no fear at all of rejection. And practice helps to get over those fears. Friend told me back in the day that I went on far more dates than anyone he knew or ever heard of. It doesn't guarantee that the person you fall in love with will be great looking, but if you never talk to anyone, them odds are zero. In regards to the don't reject yourself comment, take that a step further and apply it to everything in life. It will be a huge benefit, trust me. As a longtime restaurant employee, I believe I've seen many cooks and dishwashers unlock the secret. Feed them and agree when they're mad at someone. Honestly, the weight of my heart is definitely through my stomach. My wife is very shy and reserved. I think I was just the only guy that didn't scare her off. I hit the perfect balance of pursuing her and giving her space. Like feeding a wild cat. Until I eventually lured her to a church by the altar. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and her glasses prescription wasn't up to date. Guys that have never been with an attractive woman, and probably not many women in general, will say money. Guys that have been with attractive partners, being funny, treat women with respect, being a decent human being, that's what they do. Yeah, I can confirm, I know plenty of guys that don't have money that have gotten plenty of women. I love these threads because every woman in here is like, he's super nice, he's kind, loves dogs and kids and tips at the restaurant, has a passion for insert benign hobby here, and takes things in stride. He doesn't have a fragile ego and isn't insecure. Just be chill and girls will like you because you aren't dangerous and a liability prone to violence. And the guys in this thread are like, must be rich, must have a huge wiener. I just have no idea what else it could be because women lie so much and just aren't smart enough to know what they really want. It happens every time. I am very lucky that she was super interested in me from the start. I was just too stupid to notice at first. All worked out in the end. I'm still extremely happy with her. I was just myself and I kept being myself, and that is the key. I see guys pretending to be someone they're not, and that is a big mistake, man. I do think many men overthink that they need to be someone to attract women. At the end of the day, do you want an attractive girlfriend or do you want someone that'll accept you for who you are? If you just be yourself, you might get both. Be good at cooking, your job, and just generally being good at social functions you both agree with. It's called communication. The ways you're good at these things can vary, but generally people are looking, hopefully, for someone who complements your weaknesses, appreciates your strengths, and you can genuinely be at your most comfortable with. My source? Been with my wife for 15 years from ages 21 to 36. My fiance is absolutely stunning, and to be honest, I'm like medium ugly, but I made her laugh like no other man could hope to, and just treated her well and respected her. I've learned to realize that hot women care more about personality than average looking women. I was a late bloomer, went from a 4 on a good day to a 7 or maybe an 8 thanks to genetics and heavy lifting. We get handsome, but holy hell does it not start that way. I met my wife when I was in my early 20s. She was 19. She was one of those girls that just glows, insanely gorgeous. During our first date, I was absolutely certain she was going to just get up and leave. She didn't. After a few days, I asked her why she hadn't run away yet. She said, "I like you for you." She surprised me at work one day by bringing lunch for a picnic, and several of my coworkers said, "How the hell did you land her?" It wasn't money, although I do have a solid career and decent money. In 10 years of marriage, my wife has asked for practically nothing, and she's as anti-materialistic as you can get. I was just myself and somehow lucked out in finding a girl who was looking for that. I won't lie, I had some depressing encounters with women prior to meeting my wife. Never had a real date even until her. When I was 17, I had a girl walk into a restaurant, see me, and leave. I asked out a classmate in college and she said the dreaded, haha, ew, no. Plenty of stories. It was sad. Man, always hearing stories about people seeing someone and then just leaving is always sad to hear.
Men of Reddit, who have found out their child isn't actually theirs? How did you react and how are things now? When I was in the Navy, I had an on-again, off-again relationship with a girl back home. On my last deployment, my girlfriend told me via email that she was knocked up. I accepted it, emailed my parents, told the military, all that jazz. I ended up getting discharged, so I went back home and took care of my pregnant girlfriend. She had the baby, and I thought I was the father for 5 months, while she was on vacation with a girlfriend. While she was gone, I got an email from her boyfriend telling me that they had been together for the last 4 months, and also for the week in Myrtle Beach I was bankrolling. After that, I got the paternity test, found out it wasn't mine, and told her I was done and wanted no contact. Crappy part is, my parents still babysit and treat the kid like their grandkid, so she's at a lot of family functions and such. Also, the guy wasn't even the father. Forget her. I had a fiancé. We were supposed to be getting married. Then she went on a holiday by herself because she just needed to get away. She came back pregnant to an unemployed heroin user. I had a job and an apartment. She told me, "You've never done anything to prove you really loved me. Now's your chance. Accept me and the baby." No thanks. Last I heard of her, she's an unmarried mother of 2, and forget her. This one's a long one, so be ready for that. 2 years of DNA tests that the state continually reported as inconclusive. It led to going someplace out of state. Got it done. Got the test results back. Less than 2% probability of genetic match. Huh. So, I called her up. Asked, "So, you want to tell me what the real story is?" 2 weeks before we had our night under the sheets that resulted in the talk 9 months later, her father had come home drunk out of his mind and forced himself upon her. I still recall the tone of her voice asking me if I had actually taken the test and that it was real. Well, turns out her mother heard that conversation, notified someone, and dad took a DNA test. So her dad is the dad of her kid. And I felt horrible for her. I can't even joke about this. Her dad was arrested. The kid, last I heard, was doing well. It forced her to clean up her act. She'd gone in for heavy drug and alcohol use, and it drove us apart before the child did. And that was 10 or so years ago. We don't talk. Every once in a while I'll think about the kid, but I don't know. This world ain't a nice place. And with all the crap she'd gone through, I wasn't going to make it worse. So I left it alone. From what little I heard from mutual friends over the years, apparently dad came out of prison 3 years later a Bible guy. This all took place in Texas, by the way. Supposedly he was doing his best to support her and whatnot, but there was some kind of falling out and she moved out and in with one of her girlfriends up in Dallas. I can't even fathom it, to be honest. I still consider the man to be scum-sucking trash for putting his daughter through all that, and I can't exactly fault her at all for her literally wanting me to be the father. She was so hoping that it was the case because it reviled her. The sobbing on the phone when the realization hit was shattering. I remember being on the phone for hours, most of it her crying. I recall my mom after the fact telling me I should have sued her. In my mind, it was done. I had 2 years of my life interspersed with phone calls, genetic testing visits, even bounty hunters showing up at my door in place of work serving me with notices from her family to show up or else. She had to raise this kid with her crappy father the whole time being ignorant. All that time? It's awful. A lot of you asked why I left her, why she didn't get an abortion, etc. First of all, when she had originally called me and we had the talk 9 months later, I asked her what she wanted to do. Originally, she wanted to abort it. This was back in 2003-2004, so access to clinics was readily available. I asked if that's what she really wanted. She insisted, and I had sent her a money order to help pay for it. She never got the abortion. I originally got a story. She went in, took the pill they gave her, and it made her so sick she left. I was 22 to 23 and didn't really know anything about how they do abortions. What we learned in high school involved either the scrape or the vacuum cleaner methods, so I took her word for it. Sometime later, she went to the courts, at her family's insistence, and wanted me to provide child support, and that's when I had the choice to either pay for it or get the testing. Talking it out with my parents, because if I knew what I was doing, I decided on getting the test done. If I was going to pay for it, best to make sure I was the one who should have been responsible. At this point in our relationship, it had been about a year since that night we got down and dirty, and broke up about 3 to 4 months after that night. I had moved back home with my parents. The job I had in Houston went out of business, I was out of money and had no other options. We broke up due to her frequent alcohol and drug usage. I never understood the need for anyone to get completely wasted on alcohol. 1 to 2 drinks? Fine. Smoke some dope? It's fine. Cocaine? What the heck? No. So I ended it. And this was all before I'd even learned she was pregnant. The first test, for whatever reason, took dang near 6 months before anyone heard anything. The results came back inconclusive. I never got any more information than that, so either something happened at the lab or I don't know. I wound up getting referred to a place about an hour away from my parents and went there to get it all done. So by the time 2 years since that night of conception rolled around, we finally had the results in. I remember opening the envelope and looking the sheet over. A lot of it I didn't understand. I did see less than 2% chance of genetic match. I called the number at the top of the form and spoke to a woman, provided the info, and she took me through it. There was absolutely no way I could be the father. Now, I'll admit, I was elated at first. I thanked the woman, hung up, and looked at my cell. I had to call her. And reality set in. I called her. After all the crying and admissions, I asked what really happened the day she claimed she went in for the abortion. On her way to the clinic, she said something inside her clicked, and she wanted to keep it. The roughly $600 I had sent, she used it for clothes and stuff for the baby. I asked why she couldn't have just been honest from the start, and the results of the test were why. Some of you asked why I didn't become the child's father, because I wasn't ready for it at that point in my life. 23 years old, no job, no prospects, thousands of miles gone, and I never got along with her family. It wouldn't have been good for either of us. In the end, we agreed not to be angry with one another. She was mad at her father though. I don't know if that ever went away, though I highly doubt it did. Also, I wasn't ripping on Texas. I actually really like Texas. The people are friendly. I simply wanted to provide some geolocation to what happened is all. I spent 2 years living in Houston working for a local IT firm. Met a lot of great people. Had some amazing barbecue. Seriously, it's like you can't go 2 blocks without hitting a barbecue joint that doesn't rock. And met some folks who are religious but not Bible-thumping nuts. As far as sex criminals go, only ever met the one, and you're reading about it. So that's it. Let's go with something a little bit lighter this time around, shall we? I have a mixed-race child. Originally was told it was mine until she actually gave birth. Since she was mixed, she came out pretty light-skinned. Very light-skinned, actually. But as she got older, her skin got darker and darker. Let the mother stick around for about 1 year to 2 years. She wasn't from where we were living and didn't have anywhere else to go. Didn't want to kick baby out into the streets. Finally, I had enough of her and kicked her out. But I ended up getting attached to the little girl. Fast forward 2 years and I'm single, lonely, depressed, and missing the little girl. I've had no contact with them. Through the grapevine, I hear my little girl's real dad has nothing to do with her. No contact, no father. From the story I get, the real dad was married and refused her. I set up a meeting with my little girl after 2 years to get a feeling on the situation, and it was like those 2 years never happened. She ran up to me like she just saw me yesterday. I talked to the mother and I said that I'll take care of her. We never went to court. No child support has ever been filed. We don't fight about anything. I tell her if she needs anything as far as money or clothes, whatever, I'll take care of it. She's now 10, I'm married. My wife accepts her with open arms and loves her like I do. She's an awesome kid, great student, no troubles. I have to teach her a bit of humility because all she's concerned about is being beautiful. But if that's my biggest worry with her, I think that's okay. I wouldn't change anything at all. I will tell you one thing. I live in the South and you would think that a married white couple with 2 normal white kids and an older mixed girl, one would think you get more looks from white folks. Surprisingly, it's the black folks that give us more WTF looks than anything. But like I said, I wouldn't trade her for anything. I love that silly girl. So I'm on the other side of the fence. Basically, I'm dating this girl for about 3 years. Rocky relationship and all that jazz. I break up with her and move back to my hometown for a period. While back, she asked if she can come visit. First mistake, but believe me, intimacy was really golden between us. Anyway, 2 months after the visit, she's pregnant. Not the best news in the world, but I'm from a family of certain values on these matters, so I own up. After spending a week with her and discussing what to do, I go back home and start to prepare stuff. 3 days later, she calls and claims a miscarriage, and we sort of end it and it dies out in the next few weeks. Fast forward 7 months, and I move back to the same city, capital of Norway, Oslo, and continue my career. Suddenly, I see a Facebook post about this girl getting a child, 9 months and 2 days after her visit. It turns out she had been dating another dude for the whole 3 years we had been dating. They even lived together for 2 of the years. She kind of just decided that she felt better with him as the dad. So basically, she convinced him he was the dad. So he announced to the whole world and was just about to go on fatherly leave when I found out. I quietly asked her for a paternity test, and to no surprise, it stated with 99.99% certainty that I'm the father. Crap's unraveling, he's not happy, obviously, and has to tell the world that, nope, just kidding, I'm not a dad. Anyway, 4 years later, it's all good, and we have 50% shared custody, but dang, it was a few funky months in the start. After some questions and stuff, yes, I did spend time at her apartment. She had me over every time the other guy was away and such. She also fake moved into my apartment for 6 months. Not a man, never been in this situation, but I am the child of one of these situations, so I thought I'd chime in. TLDR, Mom stayed with her husband at first, and he is legally my father, but my dad decided he wanted to stay in the picture, so my mom eventually married him, and I have 2 dads. My mom got married when she was 17 and had 3 sons with her first husband. I'm gonna call him Ben. They were together for a long time, I think about 18 years total. Somewhere along the way, she realized she was caught in a loveless marriage, but couldn't really do anything about it. My dad, who I'll call Dave, moved in across the street and the 2 of them started spending time together, and she started an affair with him. They weren't careful enough, and next thing you know, my mom is pregnant with me. She knew from the get-go I wasn't Ben's, and he kind of had an idea too because they weren't intimate that often and the math didn't work out. But I think he went along with it just because he didn't want to think about what she was doing behind his back. My dad initially didn't want to have anything to do with me, so when I was born, they put down her husband's name on my birth certificate as the father and called it a day. Paternity tests were done though, and my mom confirmed what she already knew. Sorry, around here my details get a little fuzzy because my mom still hasn't given me a full and complete story. Dave still definitely didn't want to stick with my mom and I, and it was just agreed that Ben would raise me as his, and they would forget it happened. He was and is a great guy, and an awesome dad. Now the way I've heard it is Dave, despite his convictions, couldn't stay away because he loved my mom so much, and once he laid eyes on me, he was head over heels. Some of my earliest memories are going to visit him in his apartment. At some point between the time I was 2 and the time I was 3, my mom and Ben divorced. I don't remember it and was kept largely out of it, but I understand it was very messy. Because I was legally Ben's daughter, I got the same visitations as my other brothers who were still under 18. My mom and Dave married when I was 4, and Dave was never happy about these visits, but I was because I loved Ben so much. Ben was always daddy, Dave was dad. It was understood, and I never confused the two or made reference to one being my parent in front of the other. Even as a 4 and 5-year-old, I knew the sensitive nature of the situation. It was never confusing either, because they really are two very different people who I think provided me with a great balance of paternal figures in my life. Like I said, Ben was always daddy, sweet, endearing, with the heart of gold who just wanted his little girl to be happy and would spoil her rotten to see her smile and make stupid jokes to get a giggle out of her. Dave was dad, still kind and loved me to death, but more of the disciplinarian who I knew not to mess with. My mom's not married to either of them now, another long-winded story entirely, but I consider both of them to be my father, and I consider both of them to have done the best job they could have, and I think I turned out alright. My boyfriend's daughter is not his. He broke his hand on a door when he found out, but he never once denied her. He is on her birth certificate, has his last name, the whole 9 yards. She is his baby girl and he is her daddy. End of story. His ex-wife still likes to hold it above his head though. If you don't do XYZ, I'm getting a DNA test on baby and you'll never see her again. Burns me up. Throwaway account for reasons. I was 16 and in high school when I was dating this girl who was my first love. We will call her Kay. Kay and I were intimate roughly 3 months before homecoming. We had only been dating for a few weeks prior to that. Being a hormonal teenager was a nice mix with a girl that was willing to put out. Things go by as they usually do. We still see each other and screw like rabbits. However, Kay was also hanging out with this other guy named Derek every time she wasn't around me. My best friend Matt starts telling me that he's seeing them hold hands and making up at the art room, etc. Sure as heck, I catch them in the middle of a hot and heavy session, but being the dumb kid that I was, I forgave her. A few days later, she tells me she hasn't had her period in the last 2 months. Eventually, we try to keep things on the down low until the day of homecoming, and by the time we're taking pictures, with my whole family around, of course, she announces that she's pregnant. So begins a spiral of madness for the next 7 months. After one last night of fun at our homecoming dance, we start discussing what we need to do in order to prepare for the baby. I start applying for jobs pretty much taking in the fact that my life is in order. No more fun for me now. We make preparations to get an apartment to provide for the kid. My folks are angry at me, not talking to me until they had to. The rumors around the school are crazy. What makes it worse is that most of them were accusing me of forcing myself onto Kay. Even my friends believed it. The rumor went out that I had forced myself on her with no protection and had my way with her. It got so out of hand that counselors would call me in daily to make sure that I was of sound mind. Being accused for being a sex criminal was insane for being 16, and I wouldn't ever wish that on anyone. It all blew up when I caught Kay sexting my best friend Matt. That's when I started thinking that something was up. I know, I was a freaking idiot. About 2 weeks after, she breaks up with me and starts dating Matt. She starts calling me and texting me, calling me a sex criminal and a piece of crap lowlife. Even though she said these things, she still loved me and wanted to support our kid. I really start having a mental breakdown, knowing that I can't trust anyone. Heck, even thought about eating a bullet just to end it all. I had no one. My folks moved to a different school to hope that I could start fresh, but despite this, the torment goes on until her delivery date. My whole family is there and the hospital and my stomach is in knots. I can't breathe. This was the night that my adult life would begin. Hours pass and she finally goes through her contractions and the baby is born. The baby comes out to be black. I wish I was joking, and I know how insane this all sounds. The worst part is that my best friend Matt was black. The sheer horror on Kay's face is something that I will never forget and something that I will never forgive. Immediately, I go for a DNA test, and a few weeks later, it comes back that it's not mine. My friend Matt was screwing my girlfriend behind my back the entire time. My whole high school and teenage years were ruined because these people couldn't tell the truth. Back in college, I was seeing a girl for a while. Kinda serious, more so for her than me apparently. She winds up pregnant. I was young, didn't really know what to do, but knew if it was mine, I would do the right thing and be the father. Major caveat, I have a physical condition that makes it highly unlikely that I can actually get anyone knocked up, and she knew this. Long story and possible identifying info, so I'm leaving the details out. Anyway, she swears up and down through the whole pregnancy that it could only be mine, so I went along with it. I was out of town the weekend the kiddo was born. She apparently tried to reach me, but this was long before cell phones, and I had gone home to a different city with a college friend to party, and in all likelihood avoided home during that time frame, since I was reasonably sure it wasn't mine. Kiddo was born, I went to see them a few times over the next few weeks, and then shortly after that, they get called by my folks that she had stopped by their house and introduced it to them as their new grandson. They were ecstatic and happy for me, and all the fun stuff they anticipated about being new grandparents. I had to basically put the brakes on real hard at that point and tell them I was pretty sure that it was not my kid. I pretty much knew after I saw it. One look at it, and there was just no connection at all. It was a baby, but I saw nothing there that I recognized as mine in any way, shape, or form. Due to the fact that she was already on the dole, the state mandated a paternity test. I figured I just might as well get it over with and showed up for the appointment when they told me to. Once the results came back, there was a less than 1% chance it was mine. I turned around, never looked back. Only saw her twice since then, and it's been 20 plus years now, but both times she was almost in tears trying to apologize for doing that to me back then. I heard through the grapevine who ended up being the actual father, and he already had a few bastards running around, so he was no help to them at all. Not only that, but his poor health and drug issues put him in an early grave, so that poor kid had no father figure growing up. Thankfully, I kept a level head through the whole ordeal, and even got a letter of commendation from the county prosecutor's office saying that they wished even half the potential fathers were half as cooperative as I had been. TLDR, if you're gonna try and pin a kid on someone, make sure it's theirs if there's going to be a mandatory DNA test. Didn't make it that far, but had a little fling with a girl who I was honest and up in front with. It was a fling, and it wasn't gonna be serious. She agreed to it. So one time we were getting it on. Protection broke. I told her and she didn't seem to worry. Mind you, this was way before climax when I noticed. Also, I made sure there was no pre-emission. I had that when I put the new one on. Made sure that everything was good afterwards. Fast forward a couple weeks and she messages me saying she's preggo. I admit my heart jumped a little, but I called her calm as a British bloke drinking tea. She was so surprised that she asked why I wasn't freaking out and getting angry or panicking. Truth is, I knew that the likelihood of her being pregnant was very slim, and either way, I would man up no matter what. I asked her all the details. Was I the only one? Have you been drinking since the last time? And all that good stuff. I told her I wasn't ready for that, but the ultimate decision was hers to make. She started saying how she would never do such a thing, and I still stayed calm, told her we would talk in the morning. I was just meeting up with my boys to go party. She was shocked even more that I was still so calm and started asking where I was going because she was going out with her friends too. I didn't tell her. After that, I knew for sure she was trying to push my buttons. So the next day I spoke to her, she tells me she has to think about it. I said, take your time. Eventually, a few days later, she said she's not going to keep it and that she booked an appointment with her doctor who was in another city and over an hour away. She doesn't drive, and so I offered to give her a ride. She declined and said a friend would give her one. She said all she could to convince me that I don't need to go with her, so I backed off. I know where she worked, and she worked all day the day she was supposed to go, but she messaged me saying that she went and then she couldn't walk properly after. I played along and never spoke to her again. Mad props to this guy for having an iron will. I was dating a girl for 3 years who I had trusted. I was 18 at the time. She got pregnant. I was relatively safe, but everybody has slip-ups. I took my lumps and agreed to fatherhood and did the best I could. During the entirety of the pregnancy, she was pretty absent. She wouldn't talk to me much, sometimes for months at a time. I thought this was odd. It frustrated me beyond belief. Anyway, so later on a friend of hers started to work with me. He started to hook up with one of my coworkers. She told me he knew my GF and I was thinking, oh cool, interesting. Then she told me he banged my GF within the last year. I was mad. I called her up and talked with her. Apparently they did screw when we were on some break. This was entirely made up. The timing didn't match up with the pregnancy though, so I continued on my way to fatherhood with this soon-to-be mother that was all over the place. Eventually, she gave birth to a little girl. I wasn't there at the birth because I wasn't told it was happening. A couple of months down the road of trying to contact her, she let me see my girl. It was great. We started talking again and acting like parents. Well, just to make sure that this new baby girl was mine, I went ahead and had a paternity test. She was a 1% match, and therefore was not my daughter. I was appalled. I went to her place and asked her what this was about. She swore up and down it had to be mine. DNA is DNA. She wasn't my little girl after all. I left her, on her knees crying for me to come back to her apartment. I got a text later that day. She told me she remembered. She got blackout drunk and screwed this guy at a party. She claimed he basically forced himself upon her. I don't believe this at all. So I went through 9 months of a pregnancy and 3 months of actual fatherhood before I found out. Now I don't talk to her at all. I hear rumors occasionally about her, but I am so glad she is no longer in my life. TLDR, screw that woman.